The first time Malik Carter showed the world what he built, they laughed at him. Not just laughed, they scoffed, ridiculed, and some even accused him of staging a scam. But what stung most wasn't the laughter. It was the silence. The cold, quiet indifference from the people who were supposed to care. From the people who promised to support innovators like him, young, black, brilliant, and broke. It happened on a Wednesday in early spring, the kind of day when Atlanta air smells like cut grass and diesel. Malik had been invited to demo his invention at the Southeastern Tech Venture Summit. He showed up in a pressed navy blazer he borrowed from his cousin and worn-out sneakers he couldn't afford to replace. In his arms, a matte black case containing what he called Pulsel V3. He'd spent 3 years designing it. Nights in a garage that flooded every time it rained, sleeping 2 hours between shifts at the warehouse and online engineering courses. The device was a prototype. An AI-powered energy cell that could store and optimize power usage more efficiently than any battery on the market. It was small, barely the size of a lunchbox, but Malik knew what he had. And he knew the rules. Stay calm. Speak clearly. Don't look too aggressive. Don't look too proud. Smile. They want the genius, not the attitude. So he smiled. The auditorium buzzed with nerves and espresso. Rows of entrepreneurs in crisp suits and name-brand watches clutched their pitch decks like passports. The event coordinator barely made eye contact as she handed him his badge. 5 minutes max, stay on time. Malik nodded. When it was finally his turn, he walked onto the stage, heart rattling like a spray can. 100 faces stared up at him, mostly white, mostly skeptical. He took a breath and began. What if we could reduce urban power consumption by 40% without changing a single piece of infrastructure? He asked. A few heads tilted. This, he held up Pulsel V3, isn't a battery. It's a real-time smart energy brain. It learns your patterns, predicts peak loads, and auto-balances your consumption without user input. He pressed a button. The device lit up. In controlled tests, it saved more energy than Tesla's Powerwall at a quarter of the size and a fraction of the price. He looked at the panel of judges. One man, a clean-shaven investor with a smirk, leaned into his mic. How do we know this isn't just a fancy box with blinking lights? Malik clicked a remote. A screen behind him showed raw test data, time-stamped, third-party verified. But the room wasn't buying it. Another judge, a woman with an Ivy League pin on her blazer, spoke next. You said this is patent pending. Where's your provisional number? I filed 3 weeks ago, Malik replied. I have confirmation. No number. Then you're showing us vaporware, she cut in, voice sharp. Next. There was a beat of stunned silence. The MC stood, already motioning to security. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Malik blinked. Wait, I. 2 security guards stepped onto the stage. They didn't grab him, but the message was clear. He left the way he came in. Carrying his invention like a dead pet, staring at the ground while polite applause followed him out the door. In the parking lot, the April wind slapped his face. He set Pulsel on the passenger seat of his Honda Civic, stared at it a moment, then slammed the door. His phone buzzed. A text from Dante, his old college roommate. Damn bro. That was cold. You okay? He didn't reply. That night, Malik sat in his car under a busted street lamp outside the summit venue, watching other attendees laugh and drink on the rooftop bar. He stared at Pulsel V3, still glowing faintly in the dark. He whispered to himself, I'm not crazy. This works. It works. The silence didn't disagree. But it didn't reassure either. Speech Balloon, hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Speech Balloon. 2 hours later, he drove home, if you could call it that. His home was a converted garage in South Atlanta that smelled like mildew and motor oil. He barely made it through the door before his legs gave out. He curled up on the cot in the corner and didn't cry. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But Malik Carter had grown up learning how to cry without sound. That night, sleep never came. Instead, memories did. His grandfather's voice echoed in his head, "The world don't give nobody a blueprint, Malik. You gotta build yours from scratch." The old man had raised him more than his own father had. Every time the world tried to break him, his grandfather built him back stronger, with gears, with copper wire, with love. He sat up. Reached under the bed. Pulled out the toolbox with the initials, RC, carved in the lid. Inside were parts. Wires. And a picture, a boy with dark skin and wide eyes, holding a half-built robot with a toothy grin. Malik, age 11. He stared at it. He remembered how it felt to dream without apology. The next morning, Malik woke to a headline notification on his cracked phone screen. Unverified tech demo turns ugly at Atlanta Summit, potential scam artist removed from stage. Underneath, a blurry photo of him mid-pitch, mouth open, eyes wide. The comments were brutal. Fake. No way he made that. This is why we need vetting panels. Guy just wants a GoFundMe pity check. Malik scrolled until he couldn't anymore. Then he threw the phone across the room. But Pulsel V3 was still sitting in the corner. Still glowing. Still waiting. The next night, after another shift at the warehouse, Malik did something desperate. He plugged Pulsel V3 into his own apartment circuit. Connected it to a small server rack he'd scavenged from Craigslist. Ran a full diagnostic. Then he live-streamed it. No pitch. No suit. No summit. Just a young black inventor, tired of waiting for permission, showing the world what he made. That live stream would eventually change everything. But for now, nobody was watching. Not yet. Before Malik Carter was the guy with the blinking black box and a chip on his shoulder, he was just a kid from Southside Atlanta who liked to take things apart, even if he couldn't always put them back together. He grew up in a shotgun-style house that buzzed with bad wiring and smelled like Vicks VapoRub. His mother, Tanya, worked nights as a nurse and spent her days either sleeping or worrying about bills. His father? Malik had stopped asking about him before he learned long division. The only real father figure Malik ever had was his grandfather, Reggie Carter, a retired army mechanic who spoke in proverbs and walked with a slow, deliberate limp. Reggie lived in the same house with them for a while, and when Malik was 6, he turned their rusted-out garage into a kind of sacred space. There were tool benches, pegboards, coffee cans full of screws. If Home Depot had a grandfather, it'd look like Reggie's garage. Every broken thing got a story, Reggie would say, handing Malik a busted fan or a fried blender. Our job? Figure it out. Fix it if we can. Learn from it if we can't. By age 9, Malik had his own workbench. By 10, he was gutting old radios from yard sales and building Frankenstein speakers that made the windows rattle. Not for attention. Not for money. He just liked the sound of something broken coming back to life. But the world outside the garage was harder to fix. School was mostly noise. Malik was smart, too smart. Teachers labeled him gifted, but also difficult. He got bored easily. Didn't like to raise his hand. Got into it with a substitute once because she insisted Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. He corrected her. Brought up Louis Latimer, a black inventor who improved Edison's designs. The next day, his mother was called in for a conference. They say you're disruptive, she told him afterward, tired eyes blinking behind her CVS glasses. They say you think you're smarter than everyone else. I'm just tired of being talked to like I'm stupid, Malik replied. She sighed. Just play the game, baby. But Malik didn't want to play the game. He wanted to rewrite the rules. When Reggie passed away during Malik's sophomore year of high school, something cracked open inside him. It happened in the dead of winter. Malik was 16, and the night before, he and Reggie had stayed up late fixing a busted window unit for Ms. Gladys next door. Reggie coughed the whole time but brushed it off. The next morning, he was gone. Malik found him slumped over at the kitchen table, a half-eaten biscuit on his plate and the old army radio softly playing jazz. The grief was quiet at first, like someone turned the volume down on life. Then it roared. Malik stopped going to school for a week. The garage gathered dust. Tanya said nothing, just left food by the door. But one evening, Malik went into the garage, turned on the light, and found something waiting for him, a weathered leather-bound notebook with "For Malik" written on the cover in his grandfather's shaky scrawl. Inside were pages of sketches, circuit diagrams, notes in tiny, cramped handwriting. Power shouldn't cost your future, one line read. If we can store and learn from it, we can own it. That was the first seed of what would later become Pulsel. In college, Malik was a ghost and a legend at the same time. He went to Georgia State on a partial scholarship and stayed under the radar. He majored in electrical engineering and had the grades to go Ivy League for grad school, if he wanted to. But Malik didn't want letters after his name. He wanted results. He started working on his first prototype junior year. It was big, clunky, and sparked whenever you plugged it in. He called it the coffin, half jokingly, half out of fear it might actually explode one day. That's when he met Dante Marks. Dante was everything Malik wasn't: smooth, charming, born to network. They partnered up for a senior project and ended up building a rudimentary smart grid emulator for their final. Dante handled the business side, Malik the tech. They clicked. After graduation, Dante got a job offer in San Francisco. Malik stayed in Atlanta. "We could do this full-time, you know," Dante said before he left. "You build it. I sell it." "I'm not ready," Malik replied. "It's not ready. You're never gonna feel ready. But we're not gonna be nobodies forever." That was 3 years ago. Since then, Dante climbed the ranks at a startup accelerator. Malik built version after version of Pulsel in silence, often skipping meals to pay for parts. He watched Dante post from rooftop mixers and yacht parties, while he worked double shifts and slept on a cot in a garage with mold in the corners. Sometimes, Malik wondered if he made the wrong choice. But then he'd open Reggie's notebook. See the equations. The ideas. The dream. And he'd remember why he stayed. Family-wise, things had gotten complicated. Tanya didn't understand what Malik was doing, and she didn't hide it. "You got an engineering degree and you're playing with wires in a garage," she once snapped. "That what your granddaddy wanted for you?" "He wanted me to build something real," Malik answered quietly. She looked at him the way you look at someone falling from a building. "No one's gonna give you a chance just 'cause you smart," she said. "You not special, Malik. This world don't love us like that." Maybe she was right. Maybe. But Malik believed that if he could just get one person to see what he saw, if he could just light up one room, one street, one city, then it wouldn't matter who tried to shut the door. He'd kick it in. Back in the present, just days after his failed pitch, Malik sat at his workbench, watching the replay of his demo on a second-hand tablet. He paused the video at the moment he held Pulsel up to the crowd. He looked younger. Hopeful. Foolish. He whispered to himself, that kid didn't know how ugly it gets. But he also didn't know how close he really was. Outside, Atlanta buzzed. The night was thick with humidity and the sound of sirens in the distance. Malik turned back to the notebook. The last page had a line circled twice. "Don't let them tell you what's possible, show them." He opened Pulsel V3. Reached for a screwdriver. Started again. The garage smelled like burnt plastic and regret. Wires snaked across the workbench like tangled veins. Old computer towers were stacked against the walls, their metal guts exposed. A cheap floor fan buzzed in the corner, barely circulating the thick Georgia heat. Malik sat hunched over a disassembled circuit board, soldering iron in hand, eyes bloodshot from staring too long through the magnifier lens. He hadn't eaten since the day before. Hadn't slept right in too. The light above him flickered every few minutes, threatening to burn out completely. He kept telling himself he'd fix it. He just had bigger things to power. Version 3 of Pulsel had failed the summit test not because the tech was wrong, but because Malik had rushed it. He knew that. He'd been trying to impress people who only cared about credentials, not breakthroughs. And now, with the humiliation still fresh, he was back in his element, alone, broke, and building from scratch. Every failure was a step closer. At least, that's what Reggie used to say. But there were only so many steps you could take before falling off a cliff. The first time Pulsel worked, really worked, was a fluke. It was 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. The kind of night when Atlanta's sky glows purple from the city lights, and the world outside the garage goes quiet except for the occasional siren. Malik had been tweaking the AI integration for hours, rewriting the firmware from scratch because the off-the-shelf chipsets kept overheating. He fed the system a simulated power load, a model apartment, lights, appliances, HVAC. Just numbers. And for the 100th time, he let it run. Something changed. The screen didn't spike like before. It curved. Smoothed. The Pulsel didn't just store the power, it predicted the load fluctuations before they happened. It throttled usage based on learned behavior. And then, it balanced it. Effortlessly. Malik blinked. Sat back in the creaky chair. For a moment, he thought it was a glitch. He ran it again. And again. Same result. A whisper escaped his lips, "Oh, my God." He jumped from his chair, laughing, a raw, manic laugh that sounded like relief and disbelief at once. He danced around the garage like an idiot, knocking over a can of bolts. He didn't care. He grabbed his phone. Opened the camera. Recorded a clip of the data on the monitor and the soft blue pulse of the device. Then he froze. Who would he even send this to? Not the summit crowd. Not Dante. He closed the camera and instead opened the Notes app. Pulsel version 3.2 passed baseline stability test. Load response 12% faster than projected. Peak efficiency at 63%. Night of April 18th. Reggie, it worked. He hit save. Then he sank into the chair and let the silence wrap around him like a blanket. By the weekend, Malik had refined the build. He replaced the makeshift aluminum casing with a custom 3D printed shell, matte black, sleek. He added a diagnostic port, an encrypted software interface, and a power interface compatible with standard North American outlets. It still looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. But this time, it worked like science. The hardest part wasn't engineering. It was surviving long enough to finish the job. He was 3 months behind on rent. The garage, technically a sublease, was only still his because the landlord's cousin owed Malik a favor. He owed $400 on his credit card, $76 in his checking account, and his Honda Civic needed brakes. Again. At night, he worked at a FedEx sorting facility, backbreaking, monotonous labor that paid just enough to cover food and replacement capacitors. His boss hated him. Said he was too quiet, and not a team player. Malik just nodded and kept stacking boxes. During lunch breaks, he read machine learning white papers on his cracked Kindle Fire. Highlighted them with his fingertip and tried to forget that his back felt like it belonged to a 60-year-old man. Once, during one of those breaks, he ran into an old high school classmate, Jerome. "Yo, Carter. That you?" Malik looked up from his sandwich. "Yeah. What's good, man? Didn't you go to state? Thought you was gonna be the next Elon or something. What happened?" Malik smiled politely. "Still building." Jerome laughed. "Aight, man. Keep dreaming." It didn't bother him. Not really. He just wished people understood, this wasn't a dream. It was the plan. 3 weeks later, he decided to do something different. He pulled together every dollar he had, bought a refurbished drone camera, and spent a Saturday filming a demo of PulseCell in action. He hooked it up to a tiny off-grid power setup, solar panel, lights, laptop, heater. The system ran at full tilt for 6 hours without a hitch. Energy usage flattened. Efficiency climbed. The video was clean, short, and to the point. No music. No hype. Just results. He uploaded it to YouTube with the title Smart Energy AI, no funding. No hype. Just proof. He posted it to Reddit, to a few obscure engineering forums, and on his barely used Twitter account. Then he waited. At first, nothing. Then, 50 views. 100. Comments started trickling in. "This is fake. Cool concept. Where's the patent? Too good to be true. Prove it." But then something shifted. A retired electrical engineer from Seattle reposted the video with a breakdown of Malik's method. Then an environmental blog picked it up. Then a mid-tier tech YouTuber reacted to it, calling it the most exciting DIY energy prototype I've ever seen. Within 3 days, the video hit 22,000 views. Within a week, it crossed 100K. But fame didn't pay bills. Malik's inbox exploded: praise, doubt, offers to buy the schematic, threats to expose him as a fraud. He got messages in all caps from people claiming he stole their tech. A guy named Stan from Idaho said the government would kill him if he didn't shut that demon box down. But buried in the noise, one message stood out. It was from Dr. Kojo Mensah, a Ghanaian-born MIT professor known for his work in sustainable microgrids. Malik had read his papers. Admired him. He was one of the few black faces in global energy research. The email was short. "Malik, impressive work. I'd like to talk. No strings. Just science. My number's below. Kojo." Malik stared at it for a long time. Finally, he replied. That night, as the city glowed through the window slats, Malik stood in his garage, not just a room of spare parts, but now a place where something world-changing had actually begun. He looked at PulseCell on the table, the soft blue glow steady and calm. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's see what's next." Malik was used to the silence of the garage. It was his comfort zone, the place where everything made sense. But the moment he stepped into the meeting room at Dr. Kojo Mensah's lab, the silence became suffocating. This was real. The walls were lined with whiteboards filled with complex equations, and sleek, high-tech equipment hummed quietly in the background. Dr. Mensah's office had a polished, academic air about it, the kind of place where people discussed world-changing innovations. The kind of place Malik had only seen in documentaries about Silicon Valley. Kojo stood at the far end of the room, scribbling something on a whiteboard. Tall, with an easy smile, his presence was authoritative yet unpretentious. He was a world-renowned expert in energy systems, someone who had earned the trust of companies and governments alike. When Malik entered, Kojo turned and gave him a nod. "You're late, but it's all right. Come in. Have a seat." Malik sat in one of the empty chairs, feeling the weight of the room settle on his shoulders. His palms were clammy, but he wiped them on his jeans and set his laptop on the table. "You've had time to think about the demo?" Kojo asked, not a trace of judgment in his voice. It was a simple question, but to Malik, it felt loaded. I think it's ready, Malik replied, trying to sound confident. His voice wavered slightly, and he could see Kojo's eyes sharpen, not with doubt, but with curiosity. He wasn't here to impress Kojo with flashy visuals or sleek animations. This wasn't a tech demo for influencers. This was a moment where his invention would either make or break his future. Malik plugged in his laptop and connected it to the projector. As the pulse cell interface lit up on the screen, he felt his breath catch in his throat. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears. You know, it's not easy, Malik started, his voice unsteady but growing stronger as he spoke. To get something like this to work. It's not just about building something that works in a lab. It's about building something that can work in the real world, something that people can use to change their lives. Kojo nodded. That's the goal. And you believe Pulse Cell can do that? Malik paused for a moment. He could feel the tension in the room, and it wasn't just his nerves. Kojo wasn't just looking for a technical pitch. He was looking for the heart of it. The why. The impact. I do, Malik said, meeting Kojo's gaze. This can change the way people consume and generate energy. It doesn't just store power. It learns how people use it. And then it optimizes it. It can reduce energy bills, eliminate waste, and even help people living off-grid, the people who get forgotten in all of this. The people who can't afford the newest, most expensive tech. It's built for them. Kojo raised an eyebrow, impressed. And the data? Have you run simulations to prove it? Malik didn't flinch. I've run hundreds. I know the system's limits. I know where it shines. He clicked a button, bringing up the test results. The screen displayed an energy grid simulation, Pulse Cell's performance on a variety of power loads. The graph was smooth. Clean. More efficient than anything Kojo had seen before. Kojo leaned in, his fingers brushing over the edge of the table. This is impressive, Malik. But I see an issue. Malik's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Kojo pointed to the graph. It's good. It works. But the scalability, that's where the real challenge lies. What you've shown me so far is small scale. But this system needs to handle thousands, even millions, of data points at once. Can it handle that? Malik swallowed hard. He had anticipated this question, but that didn't make it any easier to answer. I've been working on it. I've got a prototype that can handle larger grids. But it needs more refinement. I can't promise it'll scale perfectly yet, but I know the model works. I just need the right resources, the right team. Kojo looked thoughtful. A team, huh? He stared at Malik for a long moment before speaking again. Do you understand the risks of what you're proposing? Malik nodded. I know. This isn't just a consumer product. This is a potential paradigm shift. It could disrupt the whole energy sector. It's not going to be easy. Easy? Kojo echoed with a dry smile. No. It won't be easy. But this kind of technology. It's worth the risk. The words hung in the air. Malik knew what Kojo was implying, but before he could respond, the door swung open. A tall, clean-cut man in a tailored suit stepped in, his sharp eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Kojo's face shifted, hardening ever so slightly. This is my colleague, Evan Holloway, Kojo said, standing up. He's one of the leading investors in sustainable technology. He's been following your progress, Malik. Evan extended his hand. I've seen your video. It's promising. Malik shook his hand, trying to gauge Evan's expression. Was this the breakthrough he'd been waiting for? Was this his chance to finally make Pulse Cell a household name? Promising. Malik repeated, his pulse quickening. I don't need it to be promising. I need it to work. Evan's smile didn't waver. It does work. But we both know you're not in a position to go at this alone. You need resources. You need infrastructure. And you need the backing to take it to the next level. That's where we come in. Malik's chest tightened. What are you offering me? Evan sat down, folding his hands in front of him. A deal. A partnership. We've got the capital to help you scale Pulsel and the connections to get it into the hands of people who can make a real impact. Kojo nodded. We can help you, Malik. We just need you to trust us. Malik felt the weight of the decision hanging in the air. This was what he had been working toward, the chance to bring Pulsel to the world. But at what cost? You'd control the distribution, Malik said, his voice barely above a whisper. Would you change it? Would you own it? Evan leaned forward. We're not here to take your creation. We're here to help you build it. But you'll need to share. This is how it works in the real world. Malik's mind raced. This was everything he'd dreamed of, everything he'd worked for. But the fear gnawed at him. Was he willing to sell a part of himself to make Pulsel a reality? Was he willing to play the game? He looked from Evan to Kojo, and then back at Pulsel, resting quietly on the table. His invention. His future. Let's talk numbers, Malik said, his voice steady. But I need to know something first. If we're doing this, will we change the world? Or just make it bigger? Kojo and Evan exchanged a look. I believe we can do both, Kojo said. Malik nodded. Then let's see what happens. The contract lay on the table in front of Malik, like an altar offering, an opportunity wrapped in corporate jargon and promises. He traced his finger along the edges of the paper, reading the fine print, but all he could focus on was the weight of the moment. Evan Holloway sat across from him, a casual smirk playing on his lips, fingers lightly tapping a pen on the table. Kojo was beside him, more serious, watching Malik like a hawk. The fluorescent lights above buzzed in the sterile conference room, but Malik's thoughts felt heavy, trapped in the stillness. You've had time to go over it, right? Evan asked, his tone polite but clipped. Malik looked up from the contract, trying to keep his face neutral. His mind raced with 1,000 questions. This wasn't just about money, this was about Pulsel, his invention, his dream. Would he be selling his soul to the highest bidder? Or was this the only way forward? He took a deep breath. I've read it. But it's not the numbers that matter to me. Evan's eyebrows lifted in mild surprise. Kojo's gaze softened. It's the control, Malik continued, his voice steady, though every word felt heavier than the last. This deal, what does it mean for me? What do I lose in the end? Evan leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. Let's be clear. This deal isn't just about you. It's about Pulsel. You've created something with the potential to change how the world uses energy. But to get it to market, to scale it globally, you'll need more than a one-man operation working out of a garage. You need infrastructure, marketing, production teams, distribution channels. Malik's mind flickered to the cluttered garage, the smell of burning solder, the endless nights spent trying to get the system to run just right. It was where Pulsel had been born, but it wasn't where it could survive. And you think I'm the one to run it? Malik asked, his voice quieter now. You think I can just let go of the heart of this? I built it from the ground up. Kojo interjected, his voice calm and reassuring. We're not asking you to let go of your vision. You'll still lead the company. But we'll provide the resources to help you grow it. It's the kind of partnership that ensures Pulsel becomes more than just an idea. It becomes a movement. Malik paused, considering the offer. He knew the stakes. If Pulsel could scale, it could revolutionize not just energy consumption but energy equity. It could be a global solution. But the price of that transformation was starting to feel like it might cost more than he was willing to pay. "I'm not doing this to be rich," Malik said, more to himself than to them. "I'm doing it because this could change everything, for people who can't afford the newest tech. For communities that have been left behind. That's my goal. That's what matters." Evan's smirk faded, and for a moment, he looked at Malik with something close to respect. "It's a noble goal. But we're in a business where ideals don't pay the bills, Malik. You want to change the world? Then you need to be able to move with it. Fast." Malik swallowed. The words echoed in his mind, fast. He remembered what Reggie had told him 1,000 times. The world doesn't wait for you to catch up. Either you drive it, or you get left behind. But Malik wasn't so sure anymore. He turned back to the contract. The first few pages were standard, equity percentages, profit sharing, and the like. But it was the fine print that made his pulse race. A clause about exclusivity. A clause about branding. A clause about intellectual property ownership. He'd be giving up 40% of the company in exchange for a seat at the table with Evan's investors. "You can't ask for this much control and not expect me to question it," Malik said, tapping the contract with his finger. "It says here that you'll have veto power over all major business decisions. What does that mean for me?" Kojo sighed softly, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "It means we're invested in your success, Malik. It means we want to ensure that Pulsell doesn't get lost in the shuffle of corporate interests. The resources we provide are not just about money. They're about guidance. It's a partnership, not a hostile takeover." Malik's stomach churned at the word guidance. He'd seen it before. The way big companies like to guide smaller innovators right into submission. They'd take the best parts of what you'd built and leave you with nothing but the scraps. He didn't want to be another inventor left in the dust after the real profits were made. "And what happens if I don't sign?" Malik asked, his voice low but firm. "What if I decide to do this on my own, like I've been doing?" Evan leaned forward, his smile gone now, replaced by a hard edge. "You can try. But without backing, without the proper resources, Pulsell will stay exactly where it is, a great idea with no future. You'll be a hero in your garage, Malik, but the world won't even know your name." Malik's fists clenched under the table. He didn't need to hear that. He didn't need to be reminded of the reality of it all. "And if I sign?" Malik pressed. "What does that mean for Pulsell? Does it still belong to me?" Kojo looked at Evan, then back at Malik, his expression guarded. "It will always be yours, Malik. You'll always lead it. But you'll need to make compromises. You'll need to trust us." Trust. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Trust them with his vision. Trust them with the future of Pulsell. His mind swirled with doubt. Could he trust them? Could he trust anyone in this game? Or was he just another pawn in a much larger game that he didn't understand yet? "I need time," Malik said, standing up abruptly. "I can't make a decision like this right now." Kojo stood as well, his face softening. "Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere." But Malik could feel the urgency in their eyes. He knew what was at stake. He knew they wouldn't wait forever. As he walked out of the room, the weight of the contract in his hands felt heavier than any physical object. He didn't just have to decide the future of Pulsell. He had to decide if he was willing to compromise everything he stood for, or risk losing it all. Malik stood in front of his apartment window, staring out at the city below. The lights were blurring in his vision, his mind caught in the noise of his thoughts. For the past week, he had been replaying the meeting with Evan and Kojo over and over in his head, trying to untangle the mess of emotions and promises that had followed him since he walked out of that conference room. The deal was right in front of him. A partnership with one of the most influential investors in sustainable technology. They wanted to help him, support him, take Pulse Cell to new heights. All the resources he dreamed of were at his fingertips. But the price. That was the part that kept him up at night. 40% of his company. Control over the major decisions. A tight grip on the direction of his invention. They were offering him everything he needed to succeed, but in return, they would own a piece of the dream. The heart of Pulse Cell. He let out a frustrated sigh and turned away from the window. He needed to talk to someone. He needed to get some clarity, and the first person that came to mind was Reggie. Reggie had been his best friend for years, the one person who understood what Pulse Cell meant to him. He was the one who had listened to Malik ramble about his ideas and helped him through every setback. Reggie knew his heart. Malik trusted him more than anyone else. He grabbed his phone and dialed Reggie's number. It rang twice before Reggie picked up. "Yo, Malik. What's good, man?" "Reggie, I need to talk." There was a pause on the other end. "You alright? You sound off." Malik sat down on the couch, rubbing his forehead. "I don't know, man. I'm just stuck. I had that meeting with Evan and Kojo last week. They're offering me everything, resources, investors, a way to scale Pulse Cell into something big. But there's a catch, man. They want a huge chunk of the company. 40%. And they want control over the direction of the business. I don't know if I can go through with it." There was a long pause. Malik could hear the rustling of papers on the other end, and then Reggie's voice came through, steady but concerned. 40%, huh? Damn, that's a lot. But what's your other option, Malik? What's the alternative? Malik sank deeper into the couch, letting the weight of his words sink in. I could keep going on my own. Keep working in the garage, building prototypes, trying to get investors on my own. But the reality is, I don't have the resources. I don't have the money or the network to make Pulse Cell what it could be. I could end up stuck here forever, with a great idea and nothing to show for it. Is that what you want, though? Reggie asked, his voice softer now. To stay stuck? You've been grinding for years, man. You've worked your ass off to get this far. And now you're standing at the door of something huge. You have the chance to make Pulse Cell a household name, a game changer. But it comes with a price. Nothing in this world is free. Malik leaned back, closing his eyes. He hated how true that sounded. He had worked so hard to get to this point. To get Pulse Cell to this stage. But was the cost worth it? I don't know, Reg, Malik admitted. I don't want to lose what Pulse Cell stands for. I want it to be a tool for people who need it most, not just a product that corporations can make money off of. I don't want to lose control of my own vision. Reggie was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, it was with the same thoughtful tone that Malik had always admired. Man, I get it. I really do. But think about this, if you don't take this deal, where does that leave you? The world's not gonna wait for you to figure this out on your own. Pulse Cell is bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than all of us. You've created something special, and now you've got the chance to change the game. But if you keep going on your own, you're gonna stay small. You're gonna stay in that garage forever. You'll never know what Pulse Cell could really be. Malik's chest tightened as Reggie's words hit him hard. He had known this all along, but hearing it out loud made it all feel more real, more urgent. I just don't want to be another story of an inventor who sold out, Malik said, almost to himself. I've seen it happen. The big companies swoop in, take control, and the original idea gets lost. The people who needed it get left behind. Reggie's voice softened. You can't let the fear of what might happen stop you from moving forward. You've got to take risks if you want to make a difference. This isn't about selling out. This is about creating something bigger than yourself. You're still gonna have your fingerprints all over Pulse Cell, Malik. You're the one with the vision. You're the one who can steer it in the right direction. Don't let fear control you. Malik rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. Reggie was right. He couldn't keep holding on to the past, to his fear of losing control. This was a moment that would define everything. The opportunity of a lifetime. Thanks, Reg, Malik said, his voice quieter now. I needed to hear that. I guess I'll go for it. I'll take the deal. Reggie let out a relieved chuckle. I knew you would, man. You've got this. Malik hung up the phone and stared out of the window again. The city lights twinkled below him, but the weight of the decision was still heavy on his chest. He didn't want to sell out. He didn't want to be just another cog in the machine. But he also knew that this was his chance to change the world. He couldn't do it alone. He needed to build something that could stand the test of time, something that could reach people in need. The price of progress was steep. But the cost of standing still, of staying small, was even greater. Malik stood up, his hands shaking slightly. He had made his decision. It was time to take the next step. The office was quiet, the hum of the air conditioning the only sound in the room. Malik sat at his desk, his fingers pressed against his forehead as if trying to rub away the weight of the decision he had made just hours earlier. The contract from Evan and Kojo lay open in front of him, but now that he had made up his mind, it felt more like a burden than a blessing. Pulsel had come so far. From his garage to prototype testing, to now, standing on the precipice of something monumental. But with this deal, the world would change. There was no going back. Malik glanced up at the clock on the wall. It was almost time to meet with the team. The small office, tucked away on the corner of the block, was a far cry from the corporate headquarters of the companies they were about to partner with. But it was his space, their space. It had always been where the magic happened, where the long nights of trial and error had given birth to Pulsel. He could hear the soft murmur of voices outside the door, the sound of his team preparing for their weekly check-in. Reggie was right, he had to break the news. He couldn't keep it to himself anymore. The moment had arrived. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts, and before he could respond, it swung open. Hey, Malik, you ready? Reggie's voice was casual, but there was a sharpness to it, an edge that Malik knew well. Reggie always knew when something was off. Malik stood up, brushing off his pants and trying to mask the nerves bubbling in his chest. Yeah. Let's go. The team was already gathered around the conference table when Malik entered the room. Jamal was in his usual seat, fiddling with his tablet, while Maya and Rachel were sitting next to each other, both flipping through notes. Malik had always appreciated the way they all worked together, each person bringing their strengths to the table. But today, the weight of their eyes on him felt heavier than ever before. All right, let's get started, Malik said, his voice louder than he intended. He cleared his throat and forced a smile. I know we've been working hard, and a lot has been happening with Pulsel. But I have some big news. Rachel raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. Big news? What's going on? Malik swallowed, trying to find the right words. It felt like a moment of reckoning, one that would set the tone for everything that followed. I've decided to accept the deal with Evan and Kojo, Malik said, finally letting the words spill out. The room went silent. Jamal put down his tablet, his face unreadable, while Maya exchanged a quick glance with Rachel, who looked just as shocked. Wait, Jamal said, breaking the silence, you're serious? After everything we talked about? Malik nodded, his gaze steady. I've thought long and hard about it. This is the best chance we've got to make Pulsel something bigger than just a small startup. They've got the resources we need to scale it. We can finally get this into the hands of people who need it the most. Maya leaned forward, her expression tense. But you're giving up 40% of the company, Malik. And they're going to have control over the major decisions. What does that mean for us? For the vision we've been working so hard for. Malik sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know it's not ideal. I know it feels like a lot to give up. But we're at a crossroads. We've hit a ceiling. Without their support, PulseCell won't grow. It won't reach the people we want it to. We'll stay small, and it'll just be another idea that never gets off the ground. There was a moment of tension as everyone absorbed the weight of Malik's words. The air in the room felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath. Reggie, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. Malik's right. This is the chance we've been waiting for. Yeah, the deal's got some strings attached, but without it, we're stuck. We need to think about what PulseCell could be, not just what it is right now. Jamal leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping against the edge of the table. I get that. But it feels like we're losing control over something we've worked so damn hard for. It's not just about the money, Malik. It's about the mission. What happens when we have to answer to them, when they start pushing us in a direction we don't agree with? Rachel, who had been quiet until now, spoke up, her voice measured. I think what Jamal is saying is important. We can't let them take over the soul of PulseCell. We can't let it become just another corporate product. We're not here to sell out. We're here to make a difference. Malik's heart sank. This was the last thing he wanted, to have his team question him, to see the doubt in their eyes. They had all sacrificed so much for this. They were all in this together, and now it felt like he was making a decision that might tear them apart. I know, Malik said softly. I feel the same way. But sometimes, to make a bigger impact, we have to make difficult decisions. This isn't about selling out. It's about scaling, growing, and having the ability to reach people who need PulseCell the most. We'll have control over the company's vision. I'll make sure of that. There was a long pause, the silence weighing heavily between them. Finally, Maya broke the quiet. I just hope you're right, Malik, she said, her voice filled with a mixture of uncertainty and hope. Because if we do this, there's no turning back. Malik nodded, his gaze sweeping over his team. I know. But we'll do this together. We'll make sure PulseCell stays true to its mission. We just need to take the next step. The room was still heavy with tension, but Malik could see the understanding beginning to settle in their eyes. They were all scared. He was scared. But sometimes, the hardest decisions were the ones that led to the greatest rewards. I'm with you, Reggie said after a moment. If you think this is the right move, I've got your back. We all do. Jamal looked at Malik, his eyes narrowing slightly, but after a long moment, he gave a nod. All right, let's do it. But we're gonna have to keep them on track, Malik. Don't let them turn PulseCell into something it's not. Malik felt a weight lift from his chest, but another one settled in its place. He had the support of his team. But the real work was just beginning. He had to make sure that this partnership didn't come at the expense of the dream he had fought so hard for. Thanks, guys, Malik said, his voice steady but filled with gratitude. We're in this together. Let's take the next step. As he looked around the room, Malik knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The air in the conference room was thick with tension. Malik sat across from Evan and Kojo, the contract between them now signed. The deal was official, and PulseCell's future was in motion, but as Malik watched the ink dry, he couldn't shake the feeling that the moment was too big to fully comprehend. It felt surreal. Less than a year ago, he had been in his garage, testing the first rough prototypes of PulseCell, trying to make sense of the complicated systems that powered it. Now, here he was, with two of the biggest players in the industry signing their names on the dotted line, ready to take the company to the next level. But what did that truly mean for him? What would PulseCell become once it wasn't just his alone? Evan slid the papers across the table, a smile plastered on his face. I'm excited for what's to come, Malik. This is just the beginning. We're gonna make something incredible here. Malik nodded slowly, his fingers tapping the edge of the contract, a nervous habit he'd developed. I'm excited, too. I just want to make sure we stay true to what Pulsell was always meant to be. Kojo, who had been unusually quiet during the meeting, leaned forward. That's exactly why we're partnering with you, Malik. We believe in the mission of Pulsell. We just want to give it the resources it needs to make the impact we know it can. We're all on the same team. But Malik couldn't shake the nagging voice in his head that kept reminding him of everything he was giving up. 40% of his company. Decisions being made by people who had no emotional stake in Pulsell, no personal connection to the vision. He had always fought for control, fought for his idea, and now it felt like he was handing it over. Right, Malik said, finally sitting up straighter. But let's make sure we're clear on something. I built this company from the ground up. The vision doesn't change. I'm still leading this, I'm still in charge of what Pulsell is at its core. We can scale, but we do it my way. Evan's smile faltered for just a moment, but he recovered quickly. Of course, Malik. We respect that. This is your company, your creation. We just want to help you grow it, give it the resources it needs to reach a larger audience. Malik wasn't sure if he believed them completely, but he knew this was the deal he had to make. There was no turning back now. He had given up part of the dream to make it a reality. Once the contract was signed, the air in the room shifted. There was a sense of finality to it, as if the chapter they had all been working on was now closed, and a new one was beginning. Malik shook hands with both Evan and Kojo, trying to mask the conflicting emotions swirling inside him. He was excited, yes, but there was still a heavy weight on his chest. The feeling of losing control, of sharing his creation with people who saw it as just another business opportunity, wasn't easy to swallow. The drive back to the office felt longer than usual. Malik's mind was racing, replaying the meeting over and over. He needed time to process everything, but the thought of returning to the office and facing his team made his stomach churn. When he walked through the door, Reggie was the first to meet him, his face lit up with an unspoken question. So, it's done. Malik nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. It's done. The deal is signed. We're officially partnered with Evan and Kojo. Reggie studied his face, the excitement on his own slowly dimming. How do you feel? I don't know, Malik admitted. It's a mix of relief and uncertainty. I'm glad it's done, but I can't help but feel like I've just given up a piece of Pulsell. I don't think I've fully processed it yet. Reggie nodded slowly, walking over to the small couch by the window. I get it, man. You've been holding on to this thing for so long, and now it's bigger than you ever imagined. It's hard to let go. But you're still the one who built it. You're still the heart of Pulsell. No one can take that away. Malik let out a heavy sigh and sat down next to Reggie. I hope you're right. I really do. I don't want this to become something it was never meant to be. I want it to help people, not just make money for big corporations. Reggie clapped Malik on the shoulder. I think that's why they signed you, Malik. They want that vision. If you keep pushing for it, they'll have no choice but to follow your lead. You've got the drive. You've got the heart. That's what makes Pulsell special. Malik appreciated the words, but doubt still gnawed at him. He had a new team to work with, a new set of expectations, and the pressure of making Pulsell a success on a much larger scale. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, emails, and phone calls. Malik was constantly on the move, juggling his old team's input with the demands of his new investors. Evan and Kojo were relentless in their push for progress, and while Malik appreciated their drive, he began to feel like a passenger in his own company. He knew he had to take control before things slipped too far away from him. It wasn't just about the money or the partnership anymore. It was about maintaining the integrity of Pulsell. He couldn't afford to let it turn into a product instead of a solution. One afternoon, Malik called a meeting with his team to discuss the next steps. They had a new investor-driven agenda to follow, and he wanted to make sure they were all on the same page. As everyone gathered around the conference table, Malik could feel the weight of their expectations. They were counting on him. They had followed him this far, and now they needed him to keep their vision alive. "I know things have been moving fast," Malik started, "and I know there's a lot of uncertainty right now. But we're not backing down from our mission. Pulsell is still about helping people. We have to stay true to that." Reggie gave him a reassuring smile, while Maya and Rachel nodded in agreement. Jamal, however, seemed more distant, his arms crossed over his chest, his eyes narrowed. "I just hope we're not losing sight of what matters," Jamal said quietly. "All this corporate stuff, it's a lot to swallow. I don't want to see us become another product on a shelf." Malik looked at Jamal, his voice firm but understanding. "I hear you, man. I'm not letting that happen. We're in this together. But we need to move forward, and that means navigating some of these changes. It's not going to be easy, but I need you to trust me. We're still in control of the vision." There was a long silence, and then Jamal finally nodded, his gaze softening. "All right, Malik. I'm with you." Malik let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The road ahead was uncertain, but with his team behind him, he knew they could face whatever came next. The hard part wasn't over, but at least they were in this together. The night before Pulsell's first official launch, Malik couldn't sleep. The weight of everything he had worked for, everything that had led him to this moment, was pressing on him harder than ever. Tomorrow, everything would change. No longer just a concept or a prototype, Pulsell would become a product that real people could hold in their hands, use, and rely on. The entire team had been working non-stop for weeks to prepare for the big day. Marketing materials had been printed, product launch events scheduled, and the website was ready to go live. Evan and Kojo had been instrumental in pushing things forward, but Malik had kept his foot firmly on the gas, making sure that the technology behind Pulsell was up to par. There was no room for error. But even with all the preparation, Malik couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were about to face their first major test. And if they failed, if Pulsell didn't live up to expectations, everything they had worked for could crumble in an instant. The early morning light filtered through the blinds of his office as Malik sat at his desk, staring at the countdown on his computer screen. It was just hours away. He could already hear the buzz of anticipation building as the world would soon discover what Pulsell could do. He had to believe in it. He had to trust his team. "Tomorrow's the big day, huh?" Reggie's voice broke through Malik's thoughts. He had slipped into the office without Malik even hearing him. Malik didn't look up right away but nodded slowly. "Yeah, it is. It's hard to believe it's finally here." Reggie walked over and leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "You know we've all got your back, right? I get it, this is huge. But Pulsell wouldn't be here without you. Tomorrow's just another step. You've already done the hardest part." Malik sighed and finally met Reggie's gaze. "I hope you're right. But what if it doesn't work? What if the technology doesn't hold up? Or what if the investors don't like it?" Reggie chuckled softly. "That's the thing, Malik. You can't control everything. You've done the work. The product is good. It's gonna make a difference. You can't keep stressing over what might go wrong. We're ready. We've been ready." Malik took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm brewing in his chest. "I know. I just feel the weight of it all. This is it, Reggie. It's everything we've worked for. If this doesn't work, then what? We'll have to pivot, start over. I don't know if I can do that." Reggie placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're in this together. And we've built something worth believing in. Whatever happens tomorrow, we've got each other. Don't forget that. Malik gave a small nod, grateful for Reggie's steady presence. His friend was right. They had made it this far. No matter what happened tomorrow, they couldn't let fear hold them back now. Tomorrow was just the beginning. The next day, the team was buzzing with energy as they gathered in the office, preparing for the launch event. Despite the excitement in the air, Malik could feel his nerves bubbling just beneath the surface. The plan was simple: PulseCell would go live on the website, and they would immediately begin fulfilling orders for the first batch of products. They had tested everything: the technology, the website, the payment processing, but now they had to see if the world was ready for their innovation. Malik stood in front of his team, trying to steady his nerves. "All right, guys, this is it. This is what we've all been working for. I'm proud of each and every one of you. We've come a long way, and I know tomorrow's gonna be just the beginning. But let's keep it cool. We're all in this together." Maya smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Jamal, who had been quiet lately, nodded firmly, while Rachel clapped her hands together, ready to tackle the next step. The team was ready. They were all in this together. Reggie walked over to Malik. "You good?" Malik hesitated, glancing at the team one more time. "I think so. I just keep thinking about how big this is. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff and hoping the parachute works." Reggie laughed. "You're not jumping off a cliff, Malik. You're launching a revolution. Trust yourself." As the countdown to launch approached, the team filed into the small conference room to watch the live updates as the first sales began to roll in. The nervous tension was palpable, but they had no choice but to push forward. The clock struck noon, and the website went live. The first sale came through within minutes. Then another. And another. For the first time in weeks, Malik allowed himself to exhale. They were doing it. It was happening. But not long after the initial wave of excitement, the glitches started. At first, it was small things. Customers were reporting slow load times on the website, some were having issues with the payment processing system, and others were complaining about receiving broken links in their confirmation emails. Malik tried to stay calm, but the stress was mounting with each complaint that came in. The team worked furiously, troubleshooting the issues as best as they could. Reggie and Jamal dove into the technical side of things, while Maya and Rachel worked the customer support lines, apologizing and offering quick fixes where possible. But despite their efforts, Malik could feel the pressure mounting. This wasn't how he envisioned the launch. Everything was supposed to go smoothly. The feedback wasn't just about the product, it was about the infrastructure that held it all together. Malik paced the office, his heart racing. It felt like the ground was slipping beneath him. He had to stay calm, but everything felt like it was slipping away from him. Then, as the hours ticked by, something unexpected happened. The orders began to pick up again. Despite the technical hiccups, the response to PulseCell was overwhelmingly positive. Customers were excited about the product itself, they believed in what it could do. And they were willing to wait for the issues to be sorted out. Malik gathered the team together for a quick meeting. He could see the exhaustion in their eyes, but there was also a spark of hope. "All right, guys, we've got this," Malik said, his voice steady but with an edge of excitement. "We've hit a few bumps, but the product's still getting rave reviews. We're going to fix these issues, and we're going to do it fast. We can't let these glitches define the launch. The real test is how we handle this." Reggie smiled. "You've got this, man. We all do." By the end of the day, PulseCell had sold more units than Malik ever thought possible for a first launch. But the challenges weren't over. There was still so much work to be done, from scaling up operations to handling the incoming demand. Malik knew that they had a long road ahead of them, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of accomplishment. As he sat in his office, reviewing the sales numbers, Malik realized something important: the world was ready for PulseCell. They just had to keep pushing forward, keep refining and improving. And as he looked around the office, he knew his team was more than capable of handling whatever came next. The week after PulseCell's launch was a blur of emails, meetings, and phone calls. The product was a hit. Customers were posting about it on social media, reviews were glowing, and orders were pouring in. But with success came new challenges. The excitement was quickly overshadowed by mounting pressure to scale, fast. Malik had known the path wouldn't be easy. He had expected late nights, long hours, and the stress that came with making something new work in a competitive market. But this was different. This was a new kind of pressure. He sat in his office, staring at the screen that displayed the ever-growing order numbers. A sense of pride swelled within him. PulseCell was taking off. But the pride was mixed with anxiety. Every new order represented a challenge: more units to produce, more customer support to handle, more logistics to manage. And every time the numbers went up, the pressure to meet expectations grew heavier. Reggie knocked on the door and poked his head in. "How you holding up?" Malik didn't look up from the screen. "I'm fine. Just trying to keep track of everything. It's getting a little overwhelming." Reggie chuckled, walking in and sitting down across from him. "I think we all knew this was coming. The whole team's been feeling it. But you're not alone in this, Malik. We've got your back." Malik leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I know. It's just, this is bigger than I imagined. The orders are coming in fast, and we're struggling to keep up. Our supply chain can't handle the pace. And don't get me started on the customer service complaints, it's like we're drowning." Reggie nodded, understanding the weight on Malik's shoulders. "It's normal, man. Scaling a business like this doesn't happen overnight. We'll get through it, but we need to adjust and get organized." "Right," Malik said, his voice tight. "But I promised the investors we'd hit certain targets, and I'm not sure we're going to make them if things keep going at this pace." Reggie stood up and placed a reassuring hand on Malik's shoulder. "We'll figure it out. One step at a time. Let's take a break and talk to the team. We're all in this together." Later that afternoon, Malik called an emergency meeting with the team. The pressure was mounting, and he needed to be sure everyone was on the same page. When they gathered in the conference room, there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. Everyone could feel it. The honeymoon phase of success was over, and now the real work began. "All right, everyone," Malik began, trying to sound calm but knowing the anxiety was clear in his voice. "We've got a good problem on our hands. Orders are pouring in, and people are excited about PulseCell. But we're struggling to keep up with the demand. I need everyone's help to figure out how we're going to handle this. I can't do it alone." Reggie was the first to speak. "I've been working with the logistics team to try and streamline our fulfillment process, but we're not equipped to scale this fast. We need more resources, more storage, and we need it fast." Jamal, who had been working on the tech side of things, nodded. "I've been getting bug reports non-stop. A lot of them are minor, but with the volume of orders, even small issues can escalate. We're going to need more people on the tech support side to keep up with customer queries." Maya, always the optimist, spoke up. "I know it's overwhelming, but we've done some incredible things so far. We have a dedicated team. I think we can pull through, but we need to prioritize fixing these growing pains." Malik looked around the room at his team, and for the first time in days, he allowed himself to smile. They were stressed, but they were also committed. They all believed in PulseCell. It was this belief that had gotten them this far. "I appreciate everything you're doing," Malik said, his voice gaining strength. "But we can't afford to let our customers down. Every complaint we get could turn into bad press, and that's not something we can afford right now. We've got to improve our systems, our production, and our customer service. Let's make a plan." Later that evening, just as Malik was preparing to leave the office, his phone buzzed. He glanced down at the screen, it was Evan. Malik's stomach churned. After the chaos of the past few days, he hadn't had much time to check in with his investors, and he knew Evan would want an update. He answered the call. "Hey, Evan. How's it going?" "We need to talk." Evan's voice was serious, which immediately put Malik on edge. "I've been reviewing the numbers, and I'm seeing some inconsistencies. The launch was strong, but there are concerns. Our partners are asking about the speed of production, and we've received some feedback about delays in shipping and the website issues." Malik swallowed hard, trying to mask his growing frustration. "We're working on it, Evan. We've had some growing pains, but we're addressing them. The tech team is already on it, and we're scaling up production as fast as we can." Evan sighed. "Look, I know you're doing your best, but the investors want results. This isn't just about getting things right, it's about moving faster. The sooner you fix these issues, the better. We need to prove that PulseCell can scale up quickly, or we risk losing support. And I don't have to tell you how important that is." Malik clenched his jaw. "I'm aware of the stakes, Evan. I'm doing everything I can." Evan's voice softened, but there was an edge to it. "I know you are. But remember, this is just the beginning. You need to step it up if you want to stay on top." The call ended abruptly, leaving Malik staring at his phone. He had been hoping for some encouragement, but instead, Evan had just piled more pressure onto his already burdened shoulders. The next few days were a blur of frantic activity. Malik found himself working well past midnight, trying to manage everything that was being thrown his way. He could feel the weight of the company pressing down on him more than ever before. The stakes were higher now. PulseCell had to succeed, not just for his team, but for the investors who had placed their trust in him. At the same time, he was struggling to maintain his relationships with those closest to him. Reggie, Maya, and Jamal had been incredibly supportive, but Malik couldn't shake the feeling that he was becoming more isolated. The responsibilities of running a company were taking a toll, and he was beginning to feel like he was losing touch with everything that had made PulseCell special in the first place. One night, as Malik sat at his desk staring at his phone, he realized just how far he had come, but also how far he still had to go. The pressure was suffocating, and the fear of failure was always looming. And yet, through all the uncertainty, one thing remained clear: he couldn't stop now. PulseCell was his dream, and he would do whatever it took to see it succeed, no matter how much the pressure mounted. Malik hadn't slept in 2 days. His eyes were bloodshot, his mind foggy, and his hands trembled whenever he reached for his phone to check emails. The pressure that had been building for weeks was finally starting to take its toll. Every decision felt like a gamble, and every failure felt like a personal indictment. At first, it had been manageable. The initial rush of PulseCell's success had been thrilling, and he had been able to push through the sleepless nights with adrenaline. But now, as the cracks in the system became more visible, as the customer complaints piled up, and as the investors' patience wore thin, Malik felt himself buckling under the weight. He sat at his desk, staring at the screen, but the numbers didn't make sense anymore. The financial projections, the order counts, the growth targets, they were all starting to blur together. Nothing felt real anymore. The phone rang, snapping him out of his daze. It was Evan. Malik exhaled sharply, fighting the urge to let the phone go to voicemail. He knew this conversation was coming. It was the kind of call he had been dreading. "Malik, we need to talk." Evan's voice was crisp, with a tone that made Malik's stomach drop. "I've been going over the numbers with the board. We've seen a lot of growth, but we're not seeing enough efficiency. The supply chain issues are still a problem, and it's impacting our margins. We need a clear plan of action from you, and we need it fast." Malik rubbed his eyes, stifling a yawn. "I know, Evan. We're working on it. I've got the logistics team scrambling to fix the production delays, and Jamal is addressing the tech issues. It's a lot, and we're pushing as hard as we can." Evan's voice turned colder. "That's not good enough, Malik. We've given you the resources, the support. At this point, it's on you to show us that PulseCell can scale. The board wants results, and if you can't deliver, we'll need to reassess our position. Malik's heart raced. He had known this conversation was coming, but hearing it from Evan, someone who had supported him from the beginning, stung more than he expected. I'm doing everything I can. I need more time. You don't have time, Malik, Evan said sharply. You've had months. The market doesn't wait for anyone. You need to step it up, or you're going to lose everything. The call ended with a harsh click. Malik was left sitting in the silence of his office, feeling the weight of his words. The air felt suffocating. He hadn't realized how much pressure he had been under until it felt like his entire world was collapsing in on him. It wasn't just the investors or the customers that were starting to wear him down. Malik's personal life was crumbling, too. He hadn't spoken to his family in days. His mother had called twice, leaving voicemails, but he had never found the time to call her back. Reggie, Jamal, and Maya had been trying to check in, but Malik had pushed them away. He couldn't afford to let anyone see how much he was struggling. That night, after another 16-hour workday, Malik collapsed into bed, his mind racing with what needed to be done. But his body refused to cooperate. He tossed and turned, trying to escape the overwhelming pressure that threatened to suffocate him. Every mistake, every misstep, felt like another nail in the coffin of his dream. He woke up the next morning feeling worse than before, with no clarity, no answers. His mind felt foggy, and his body was physically exhausted. But he had no choice. PulseCell was still his responsibility, and he couldn't afford to let his team down. They were counting on him. He showered quickly and pulled on a fresh shirt, trying to fake it until he made it. He had to face the team. He had to lead. When he entered the conference room, Reggie, Maya, and Jamal were already there, waiting. There was an uneasy silence in the room, and Malik could see the concern on their faces. "Hey, Malik," Maya said gently. "How are you holding up?" Malik forced a smile, but it felt hollow. "I'm fine. We just need to keep pushing. There's no other choice." Jamal, always the pragmatic one, studied him carefully. "Malik, man, you look wiped out. We all see it. You can't do this alone. You've got to take a step back and let us help." Malik shook his head, the weight of everything pressing down on him. "I can't. Not now. The investors, the board, they're all breathing down my neck. If I don't deliver, we're done." Reggie leaned forward. "Malik, we're all in this together. We've been through the hard parts before, and we can get through this too. But you can't keep burning yourself out like this. We need you at your best." Malik felt a knot tighten in his chest. He didn't want to admit it, but he was running on empty. His mind was exhausted, and his confidence had been chipped away with each passing day. "I don't know if I can do this anymore." The words hung in the air, more vulnerable than Malik had ever allowed himself to be with his team. He had been their rock, the one who held everything together. But in that moment, he felt as if the weight of it all was going to crush him. There was a long silence before Reggie spoke. "It's okay to admit you're struggling. No one's expecting you to have all the answers. We've been working our asses off, and we've made mistakes along the way, but we've also done some incredible things. We're not going to let this fail because you're too proud to ask for help." Malik stared at Reggie, the truth of his words sinking in. He had been so focused on proving himself, on not letting anyone down, that he had neglected the one thing that had gotten him this far, the strength of his team. It wasn't about doing everything himself. It was about trusting the people who had believed in him from the start. "I don't want to let anyone down," Malik said softly, the exhaustion finally catching up with his words. "But I'm scared. I don't know if we're going to make it." Maya reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "We're not going anywhere, Malik. We've got this. All of us. You're not alone in this fight. Malik felt a weight lift from his shoulders, but only slightly. He wasn't sure how they would make it through the mess they were in, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't do it alone. He had to trust his team, and he had to trust himself. By the time the meeting ended, Malik had made a decision. They couldn't keep up with the current pace. They needed more help, more resources, and they needed to make some difficult calls. It was time to bring in reinforcements, hire temporary staff for customer service, and possibly look for a logistics partner who could scale with them. He was still scared, still overwhelmed, but at least now he knew he wasn't facing it alone. As he left the conference room, Reggie caught up to him. "You okay?" Malik gave him a small smile. "Yeah. I think we're going to be okay." But deep down, he knew the road ahead would be anything but easy. The breaking point had arrived, but it wasn't the end. It was a chance to rebuild, to face the challenges head-on. He had no choice but to push forward, for himself, for his team, and for Pulsell. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The day after his conversation with the team, Malik woke up feeling like he had a weight lifted from his chest. He wasn't fully free of the stress, but he had taken the first step toward regaining control, and it felt good. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't drowning in the pressure. He had a plan, and that plan involved asking for help. The first call of the morning was to Evan. Malik knew the investors were anxious, but he also knew that he couldn't keep hiding the cracks in the business. They needed a solution, not more empty promises. And he had a plan. "Hey, Malik," Evan answered the phone, his tone clipped but not unfriendly. "What's going on?" "I'm calling to update you," Malik said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've taken a hard look at where we are, and we're not where we need to be yet. But we're going to fix it." Evan was quiet for a moment. Malik could hear the skepticism in the silence. "I've reached out to a logistics partner who can help us scale faster. We're bringing in temporary customer service staff to handle the backlog, and we're working on improving our tech to handle the increased demand. But this is going to take some time," Malik continued. "We need more resources, but I believe in what we're doing here. Pulsell can still succeed, but we need the right support." Evan's tone softened, though Malik could hear the weight of the decision in his voice. "All right. Let's see the numbers and the plan. I want to see action, Malik. No more delays." Malik's heart raced, but he felt the weight on his shoulders ease just a little. He wasn't being asked to do it all himself anymore. He was building something that could grow, something that wasn't dependent solely on him to carry it. "Thanks, Evan. I'll get the plan over to you as soon as possible." That afternoon, Malik sat down with Reggie, Jamal, and Maya to hash out the details of their plan. The pressure had been mounting for weeks, and now that he had finally allowed himself to ask for help, they could focus on putting together the pieces they needed to scale quickly. "I've already got a list of logistics partners who can help us out," Reggie said, tapping away on his laptop. "I'll start making calls, see who's willing to work with us on short notice. I've got some contacts who might be able to get us up to speed in a week or two." Jamal nodded. "I'll work on fixing the website issues, but we're going to need more hands on deck for tech support. The backlog of customer service tickets is growing fast. I'm already feeling the strain. We need more resources." Maya chimed in, a bright spark of optimism in the midst of the chaos. "I think we should also focus on improving the user experience. There are some small tweaks we can make to the site that could make a huge difference in reducing the number of complaints. I've been gathering feedback from customers, and I've got a list of improvements that could make a big impact." Malik felt a small smile tug at the corner of his mouth. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't the only one carrying the weight. He had a team that was ready to tackle the challenges, and together, they were going to find a way through. "All right," Malik said, taking a deep breath. We'll do it. We'll hire the help, fix the issues, and scale. Let's get started on this today. We don't have time to waste. The team got to work immediately, each of them diving into their areas of expertise. Reggie started making calls to logistics partners, Jamal focused on tech, and Maya worked on gathering more customer feedback and drafting potential solutions. Malik spent the next several hours drafting the plan to send to Evan, outlining every step they were taking to address the issues and meet the investors' expectations. That night, as Malik sat in his office, exhausted but with a sense of accomplishment, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Reggie. Good news. We've got a logistics partner ready to scale with us. They can start immediately and will have us on track in no time. Malik smiled for the first time in days. He texted back a quick response, "That's great news. Let's keep pushing forward." The next morning, he sent the plan to Evan, detailing every initiative they were undertaking to ensure the success of Pulsell. As he clicked send, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. This was the moment of truth. Evan's response came quickly. "I'm glad to see you're taking action, Malik. Let's keep the momentum going. Keep me updated on the progress. I'll be watching." Malik leaned back in his chair, letting the weight of the moment sink in. He was no longer just holding the ship together by sheer willpower. He had a plan. He had help. And, most importantly, he had the trust of his team. A week later, Malik and his team gathered in the conference room for the long-anticipated investor meeting. They had made substantial progress, but the pressure still felt immense. Malik paced back and forth in the room, waiting for Evan and the other board members to arrive. When they finally walked in, Malik could feel his heart pounding in his chest. The board members were all business, their faces unreadable. Evan, however, gave Malik a brief nod of acknowledgement, which was a small comfort. "I know we've been under a lot of scrutiny these past few weeks," Malik began, standing in front of the large conference table, trying to steady his voice. "But we've taken steps to address every issue we've encountered. We've partnered with a logistics company to scale our supply chain, we've increased our tech support team, and we're enhancing the user experience based on customer feedback." He paused, meeting Evan's eyes. "I'm confident that we're on the right path now. Pulsell has the potential to be something huge. We're not just solving a problem, we're building a solution that can change the way people think about energy storage. We're scaling. We're growing. And we're ready to take the next step." Evan was silent for a moment, his expression hard to read. The other board members murmured among themselves. Then, Evan nodded. "All right, Malik. I'll give you credit, you're turning things around. But we need to see the results. Keep us updated on your progress, and we'll keep backing you. I think you've got this." The words hit Malik like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in weeks, the tension in his chest loosened. He wasn't out of the woods yet, but this was a turning point. The investors were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. They believed in him, and in Pulsell. As the meeting wrapped up, Malik walked out of the room with a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he was no longer facing it alone. He had a team, he had a plan, and he had the confidence that he could navigate whatever came next. He texted Reggie, Jamal, and Maya, "We did it. Thanks, guys. Let's keep going. This is just the beginning." He knew the hardest part was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But for the first time in a long while, Malik felt like he could take on anything. The weeks following the investor meeting felt like a blur to Malik. They had made incredible progress. The logistics partner had proven to be exactly what they needed, streamlining their supply chain and cutting delivery times in half. The tech issues that had plagued the company were finally being addressed, and Pulsell's customer service team was back on track, handling the flood of requests with new staff and improved processes. Malik had to admit it, things were looking up. He sat in his office one afternoon, reviewing the updated sales figures. The numbers were climbing steadily, and the customer satisfaction ratings were improving. He could feel the momentum shifting in their favor. There were still hurdles to overcome, but Pulsell was finally on the path to recovery. "Hey, Malik, you got a minute?" Maya's voice brought him back to the present. She was standing in the doorway, holding a tablet in her hand. "I've been going over the feedback, and I think we need to make a push in a new direction." Malik looked up, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" Maya stepped inside, pulling up a graph on the tablet. "Our users are loving the technology, but they're also starting to ask for more personalized options. We're seeing a huge demand for home integration with smart devices. People want Pulsell to sync with their smart home systems." Malik frowned thoughtfully. "That's interesting. It's a shift, but it could be a game changer." She nodded. "Exactly. It's a growing market, and we could position ourselves as leaders in the smart home energy solution space. But it's going to require some serious upgrades to our tech, and we'll need to partner with the right companies." Malik leaned back in his chair, considering the idea. It was a risk, but it was the kind of risk Pulsell needed to stay ahead of the competition. He knew they couldn't afford to become complacent. "Let's do it," Malik said, his voice steady. "Let's figure out the logistics and get the ball rolling. If we can tap into the smart home market, it could give us the edge we need." Maya smiled. "I'll start researching potential partners. It won't be easy, but I think it's worth pursuing." As Pulsell's operations expanded, so did the challenges. The rapid growth meant that more resources were needed, both in terms of technology and human capital. Malik found himself having to make decisions faster than ever before. Hiring more people, expanding the customer service team, and scaling up production were just a few of the challenges they faced. At the same time, the expectations from the investors had only grown. The board was now pressuring Malik to not just meet, but exceed the growth targets they had set. There was an unspoken understanding that this was the make-or-break moment for Pulsell. If they didn't continue to grow, they could risk losing everything. Malik called an all-hands meeting with the team to lay out the vision for the next phase of the company. When everyone gathered in the conference room, he stood in front of the whiteboard, outlining their goals for the next quarter. "We've made incredible progress, but we're not done yet," Malik began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of responsibility. "We're about to enter a new phase. We're going after the smart home market, and we're going to need all hands on deck to make this happen." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "That's a big move. Are we ready for it?" Malik nodded. "We have the foundation. Now we just need to build on it. We'll need to improve the user interface, integrate with other smart home systems, and ensure our tech is reliable. It's going to take a lot of work, but I believe we can do it." Maya spoke up, her enthusiasm palpable. "I've already started looking into potential smart home partners, and I think we have a few great leads. We can't waste any time, though. This market is moving fast." Reggie added, "We'll need to beef up production to meet demand. I'll start looking into expanding our warehouse and streamlining our manufacturing process." Malik smiled at the team's energy. They were all in. This wasn't just his company, it was theirs. "All right, let's do it. I know it's going to be tough, but we've made it this far together. Let's show the world what Pulsell can do." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Pulsell's engineering team worked tirelessly to enhance the technology, integrating it with smart home platforms like Google Home and Amazon Alexa. Maya and her team worked overtime to negotiate deals with potential partners, while Reggie began organizing the logistics of scaling production. It was exhausting. Malik had to balance keeping the investors happy with pushing the team forward on these new projects. But as the days passed, he began to see the results. The first round of smart home integrations was a success. Pulsell's new compatibility with smart devices was a hit with early adopters. Customer feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and sales began to spike again. But with the success came new pressure. The board wanted more, faster. They were pleased with the progress, but they wanted PulseCell to push the boundaries even further. Malik found himself working longer hours, juggling meetings, calls, and decisions about hiring, marketing, and production. He was used to the hustle, but something was starting to shift. The exhaustion was starting to pile up again, and Malik found himself falling into old habits, working through the nights, not checking in with his team as much as he should have, and letting the pressure dictate his every move. One evening, after another marathon day of meetings, Malik sat in his office, staring at the latest sales report. The numbers were good, but they weren't enough. He had a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. He felt like he was losing control again. Malik knew that he couldn't keep pushing himself without taking a step back. He couldn't keep the company on track if he was burning out. That's when he reached out to Evan. He had been hesitant at first. He didn't want to seem like he was struggling, especially after everything they had accomplished. But he realized that if PulseCell was going to succeed, he needed to stay grounded, and that meant asking for help. "Evan, I need to be honest with you," Malik began when Evan picked up the phone. "The growth is happening, but it's starting to overwhelm me. The pressure is intense, and I'm worried that I'm not leading the team the way I should be." Evan paused for a moment. "Malik, I know it's been tough. But this is part of the journey. If you can't manage the pressure, then you're going to have a much harder time leading the company through this growth phase." Malik felt a pang of frustration. "I know, but I can't do it all. I need to be able to trust my team, but I also need to trust myself." Evan's voice softened. "You don't have to do it alone, Malik. You've got the right people around you. It's about balancing the load. Delegate more, trust your team more, and keep your focus on the big picture." Malik took a deep breath, the weight of the conversation sinking in. "I appreciate that, Evan. I needed to hear it. Just remember," Evan added, "you're not alone in this. Keep your head up." Malik hung up the phone and sat in the quiet of his office, reflecting on the conversation. He had been carrying the weight of PulseCell's future on his shoulders, but he didn't have to do it alone. It was time to delegate more, to trust the team he had built, and to stop letting the pressure define him. The next morning, Malik gathered his team. They had reached a turning point, and now it was time to act. "I've been thinking," Malik began, "and I realize that I've been carrying too much of the burden myself. You're all incredibly capable, and it's time for me to trust you more. I'm not going to keep trying to do it all. I'm going to focus on the big picture, and I need all of you to take ownership of the areas you're best at." Reggie smiled, Maya nodded, and Jamal gave him a thumbs up. For the first time in a while, Malik felt a sense of calm. The road ahead would be challenging, but they would walk it together. And maybe, just maybe, that was the key to success. The decision to delegate more and trust his team paid off quickly. Over the following months, PulseCell's smart home integrations became a game-changer. Sales surged, customers were raving about the new features, and the team's cohesion grew stronger with each success. It felt like they were on the edge of something big. But growth, as Malik quickly learned, didn't come without its own set of challenges. The faster they scaled, the more complex the problems became. One of the biggest hurdles came when they began negotiating with potential retail partners. The smart home industry was competitive, and the stakes were high. Major retailers like Best Buy and Home Depot were interested, but the terms they offered were less than favorable. Malik found himself in constant meetings with these retail giants, pushing back against their demands, trying to secure a deal that would benefit PulseCell in the long term. Each negotiation seemed to drag on, and with every delay, the pressure from the investors mounted. "We need to be in stores soon," Malik, Evan had told him during their last call. "We're not going to make it with just online sales forever. The market is moving too fast." Malik understood the urgency, but he also knew that pushing too hard, too quickly could compromise PulseCell's value. He needed the right partners, and he couldn't afford to make a deal that would undermine their vision. Still, the uncertainty weighed heavily on him. Would they secure a deal in time? Or would the pressure from the investors force his hand? The tension in the office was palpable. Everyone was working harder than ever, but the pressure was starting to show. Maya was juggling negotiations with potential smart home tech partners, Jamal was overseeing a complete overhaul of their tech infrastructure, and Reggie was in constant communication with the logistics team to make sure they could keep up with demand. Malik had delegated well, but it wasn't enough to alleviate the feeling of constant stress. Every decision now felt like it could be the difference between success and failure. The company was growing so fast, and every new hurdle felt more daunting than the last. One afternoon, Malik sat down with Jamal, hoping for a quick check-in, but he quickly realized how much pressure Jamal was under. The normally upbeat engineer was sitting hunched over his laptop, a cup of coffee long forgotten by his side. His eyes were bloodshot, and his usual spark was dimmed. "Hey, Jamal, how's everything going with the new software update?" Malik asked, trying to sound casual, but he couldn't ignore the concern rising in his chest. Jamal looked up, rubbing his eyes. "Honestly? It's tough. We're facing some issues with the smart home integration. The software's not syncing with some of the devices we're testing. It's not a huge problem, but it's delaying everything. And I'm getting worried about the timeline." Malik's heart sank. He knew how important this integration was to their future success. "What do you need from me to make sure we can fix it?" Jamal hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "I need more time and more hands on deck. Right now, it's just me and 2 other engineers, and we're pushing the limits of what we can do. We've got a couple of open positions, but we're not going to make it unless we hire more people or get outside help." Malik sighed, rubbing his forehead. This was the last thing he wanted to hear. The pressure to scale faster, to stay ahead of the competition, was already intense. But now, there was another factor to consider: their internal capacity was stretched thin. "I'll get HR on it," Malik said, though he didn't feel confident about adding more hires into the mix. He couldn't afford to risk it, but at the same time, Jamal was right. They needed more hands if they were going to meet the timeline. A few days later, after hearing more from Jamal and Maya, Malik sat down with the executive team for a meeting. They had made progress in many areas, but now they had to make a choice. They could push forward with the current resources, risking burnout and missing deadlines. Or, they could take a step back and hire more talent, giving themselves the space to maintain quality as they scaled. "We're at a crossroads," Malik said, addressing the team. "We can't keep going at this pace. We're already stretched thin. But we also can't afford to slow down." Reggie leaned forward, his voice calm but insistent. "Malik, the team's working hard, but we can't sacrifice the quality of the product. We need more engineers, more people to handle logistics. If we don't, we're going to crash." Maya agreed. "We've got the retail partnerships on the line, but if we don't meet these deadlines, those deals could fall through. It's make or break." Malik nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. He had always prided himself on being scrappy, doing more with less. But this was different. They were no longer a small startup with just a few employees. Pulsell had grown into a company with hundreds of moving parts, and it needed to evolve to survive. "We need to scale faster. I'm going to approve a hiring push," Malik decided, the words feeling heavy as he said them. "We're going to bring in more talent to help with tech and logistics. And we're going to do it right now." The hiring process was intense. Within a matter of days, Pulsell was interviewing engineers, customer service reps, and supply chain specialists to help meet the growing demand. Malik was exhausted, balancing interviews with business meetings, trying to keep everything moving forward. But he knew this was the right decision. By the end of the week, they had added 3 new engineers to the team, a senior logistics manager, and several customer service representatives. It was a relief, but also a reminder of just how much PulseCell had grown in such a short amount of time. It was no longer the small startup where everyone wore multiple hats, it was a company that required structure, support, and oversight. With the new hires in place, things began to move faster. Jamal and his team tackled the smart home integration with renewed energy, while Reggie focused on refining the supply chain to ensure PulseCell's products could meet the increasing demand. Malik felt a sense of relief, but the pressure was far from over. As the company expanded, the challenges grew more complex. Retail negotiations continued, and Evan's calls became more frequent. The investors were pleased with the progress, but they wanted more, faster. As the months passed, PulseCell continued to thrive. Their integration into the smart home market proved to be the right move, and the retail deals were starting to come together. But with every new success came more uncertainty. Malik found himself constantly questioning the next step. What if they didn't hit their sales targets? What if a competitor came out with a better product? What if they couldn't meet the increasing expectations of their investors? The doubts began to creep in. One evening, as he sat alone in his office, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the edge of something big, but also on the edge of failure. Success felt within reach, but the future remained uncertain. The road ahead was filled with both promise and peril. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. The late nights, the sacrifices, the sleepless hours spent trying to keep PulseCell alive. It had all been worth it, but now the stakes were higher than ever. Malik knew one thing for sure, whatever came next, he couldn't do it alone. It was time for him to step up as a leader, to guide PulseCell through the challenges ahead. And if that meant facing the unknown, then so be it. The morning air was crisp as Malik stood by the window, overlooking the city. The skyline was dotted with office buildings, each one filled with its own set of stories, success, failure, and everything in between. PulseCell's headquarters stood tall in the midst of it all, a symbol of how far they had come. But for Malik, the city outside was just a reflection of the uncertainty that loomed inside. Things had been looking up. PulseCell was expanding into new territories, the smart home integration was becoming a hit, and they were securing new partnerships left and right. There was an undeniable sense of achievement in the air, but the pressure to maintain this momentum was growing. As Malik leaned back in his chair, his thoughts turned to the next steps. The retail deals were coming together, and there was a growing buzz about PulseCell's products in the market. But every decision now felt more consequential. Every move felt like it could make or break the company. The board wanted results, and they wanted them fast. Malik, we need to talk, Maya's voice broke him from his thoughts. She was standing at the door, holding a folder in her hand. Malik looked up, gesturing for her to come in. What's going on? Maya walked in and sat down across from him, her face serious. I've been going through the latest numbers, and there's something you need to know. We're hitting capacity. The demand for PulseCell is growing faster than our infrastructure can keep up with. Malik's stomach tightened. He had known it was coming. The hiring push had helped, but it wasn't enough. What do you suggest? Maya hesitated for a moment. We need to consider expanding our operations. That means more warehouse space, more distribution centers, and more staff. I've already started talking to a few potential partners, but we need to move fast. Malik ran a hand through his hair. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Expanding their operations was a massive undertaking, it would require capital, time, and more resources than they had at their disposal. But if they didn't, the demand would outgrow them, and they would risk losing the momentum they had built. How soon can we scale up? Malik asked. Realistically, it would take us at least 6 months to fully expand, Maya replied. But we need to act now. Otherwise, we'll start losing customers and partners. Malik sat in silence for a moment, letting the reality of the situation sink in. Expanding PulseCell's infrastructure was a necessary move, but it also meant that they would be pushing their limits even further. The risk of failure was high, but the reward could be even greater. "We do it," Malik said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the decision. "Let's start making the arrangements. We'll figure out the details as we go." Maya nodded. "I'll get on it right away." As Pulsel worked to scale its operations, the cracks in the system began to show. The new hires were still getting up to speed, and the additional warehouse space wasn't fully optimized yet. There were delays in production, communication issues between teams, and even some customer complaints that had started to trickle in. Malik tried his best to remain calm, but it was hard. He had taken on a lot, and the mounting pressure was starting to take its toll. The team was working around the clock to meet deadlines, and the stress was becoming palpable. One afternoon, Malik met with Reggie and Jamal in the conference room to discuss the logistics of their new warehouse expansion. Both of them looked tired, their faces drawn from the constant workload. "How's the new warehouse running?" Malik asked, trying to sound upbeat. Reggie sighed. "It's not ideal, Malik. We've got a lot of stock, but it's not being handled as efficiently as we need it to be. The layout isn't working, and our team's having trouble keeping up." Jamal added, "We're seeing some issues with the tech integration too. The new systems aren't syncing properly with the current setup. It's causing delays, and we're not able to fulfill orders as quickly as we should." Malik felt the familiar pang of frustration. This wasn't supposed to be happening. They had scaled too fast, and now they were paying the price. "We need to fix this, and we need to fix it fast," Malik said, his voice sharp. "I'll get the team together to brainstorm solutions, but we can't afford to keep letting these problems slide. If we want to be a major player in the smart home space, we have to act like one." The next week, Malik found himself sitting across from the investors in their sleek conference room, the atmosphere tense. They had been waiting for Pulsel to deliver on their promises, and the delays in production and distribution were becoming a point of contention. "Malik, we've been patient," one of the investors, Gregory, said, his voice cold. "But the delays are unacceptable. We've given you the resources you need, and now it's time to see results." Malik took a deep breath. He knew this meeting wasn't going to be easy. "I understand your concerns," he said. "But the fact is, Pulsel is growing faster than we anticipated. The demand is overwhelming, and while we're scaling up, there are bound to be growing pains. I assure you, we're doing everything we can to address the issues." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "That's not good enough. The market is moving fast, and if you don't get your act together, someone else will step in and take your place." Malik clenched his jaw, holding back the frustration that threatened to spill over. "We're working on it. I'm confident that in the next few months, we'll be able to deliver the results you're looking for." One of the other investors, a woman named Linda, chimed in. "I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, Malik. But we need to see measurable improvements soon. Otherwise, we'll have to reconsider our involvement." Malik nodded, his mind racing. This was the moment that could define Pulsel's future. He couldn't afford to let them down. "You'll see results. I'll personally oversee the improvements to the supply chain and tech integration. We're not backing down." After the meeting, Malik sat in his office, exhausted and frustrated. The weight of the investors' expectations hung heavily on him, and for the first time in months, he wondered if they had taken on too much. He had been pushing himself, pushing his team, trying to keep everything together, but was it enough? As the sun began to set outside, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya. "We've identified the main issues with the warehouse. We can fix it within the next week." A small wave of relief washed over him. They had a plan. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they were making progress. Malik knew that it was going to take everything they had to keep going, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of hope. He wasn't alone in this. He had a team that believed in the vision, and together, they would find a way through the storm. The weeks following the investor meeting were a blur. Malik poured every ounce of energy he had into addressing the issues with PulseCell's expansion. The warehouse optimization was a daunting task, and the tech integration problem seemed to multiply by the day. But the pressure wasn't just internal. As PulseCell's footprint grew, so did the scrutiny. Every misstep was magnified in the media, and the expectations from investors became even more demanding. It felt like the walls were closing in on Malik. One morning, as he sat at his desk, poring over spreadsheets and logistics reports, his phone rang. It was Evan, the lead investor. Malik had been expecting this call, but that didn't make it any less nerve-wracking. Malik, Evan's voice was sharp, the tone familiar and businesslike. I've been reading through the latest reports, and I'm not seeing the kind of improvements we discussed. You're running out of time. Malik closed his eyes for a brief moment, steeling himself. I understand. We've made progress, but it's going to take a little longer to fully stabilize. We're addressing the main issues with the warehouse and tech integration. The team is working around the clock. You need to do better, Evan interrupted, his voice growing colder. Your numbers are still lagging behind. You're missing key deadlines, and we're losing confidence in your ability to execute. Malik's grip on the phone tightened. He could feel the pressure mounting, but he couldn't let it show. We're addressing everything, Evan. The issues are complicated, but I promise you, we'll turn it around. You better, Evan replied, his voice hardening. I'll be in touch next week for an update. You don't have much time. The line went dead, leaving Malik in the silence of his office. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady his breath. Evan's words echoed in his mind, and the weight of the situation sank deeper. The investors were losing patience. How much longer could he keep them at bay? Malik couldn't escape the feeling that the entire company was on the edge of collapse. While he was focused on the big picture, the team had been working non-stop to resolve the issues. But even the most dedicated people had their breaking point. He noticed the strain in their faces. Maya had become quieter during meetings, her sharp focus giving way to a weary determination. Reggie was snapping at team members more often, frustrated with the pace of the warehouse improvements. Jamal, usually calm and collected, seemed to have aged 10 years in the past few weeks, his eyes carrying the weight of every tech problem they couldn't solve. One evening, Malik walked into the office to find Jamal hunched over his desk, staring blankly at the code on his computer screen. Malik had come in for a quick check-in, but seeing the toll on Jamal's face made him pause. Hey, Malik said softly, walking over to his friend. You doing all right? Jamal looked up, his face drawn. I'm trying, Malik. But the tech integration's not going the way we thought. We're facing issues with syncing some of the devices, and the system's failing in ways we didn't anticipate. The last thing I want is to let you down, but I'm not sure how much longer I can keep pushing this hard. Malik could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He knew Jamal had been working tirelessly, but the pressure was becoming too much for even him. The same pressure was evident across the team, and Malik realized that pushing them harder wasn't the answer. Take a break, Malik said, his voice firm but caring. We'll figure this out. I'm not going to let this destroy us. Take tomorrow off. You deserve it. Jamal hesitated but then nodded. Thanks, Malik. I'll try to get some rest. Malik sat alone in his office that night, thinking about the next steps. The weight of the situation felt suffocating. He had never imagined running a business could be this overwhelming. The stakes had never been higher, and the challenges seemed to multiply every day. There was no clear answer, no magic solution. But one thing Malik knew for sure, he had to make a choice. The investor pressure, the team's morale, the mounting delays, it was all a heavy burden to carry. And as much as he wanted to fix everything at once, he realized that it wasn't sustainable. He had to rethink their approach. The first thing he needed was a step back, a chance to reassess their priorities. They had spread themselves thin, trying to do too much at once. It was time to refocus and take a more deliberate, strategic approach to their growth. He picked up the phone and dialed Maya's number. When she picked up, her voice was tired but attentive. "Hey, Malik. What's up?" "I've been thinking," Malik began, choosing his words carefully. "We need to scale back. We can't keep going at this pace without burning out. Let's pause the push for new retail partnerships and focus on stabilizing our current infrastructure." Maya paused for a moment, likely processing what he had said. "You're right. I've been feeling the same way. We've got to fix the foundation before we build on it." "Exactly," Malik said, his voice gaining strength. "We need to get the warehouse running smoothly, finalize the tech integration, and make sure our team isn't working themselves to the bone. Once we have that in place, we can start focusing on expanding again. But right now, we need to steady the ship." Maya agreed. "All right, I'll make sure the team is on board. We'll get things under control, and then we can push forward when the time's right." Malik had decided on a new course of action, a temporary halt to the aggressive scaling. They would focus on stabilizing operations, getting the technology right, and ensuring that the team had the support it needed. He believed that taking a step back would give PulseCell the breathing room to grow in a sustainable way. For a brief moment, it felt like there was a calm, a respite from the storm that had been raging for months. But Malik knew it was only temporary. The investors wouldn't wait forever, and the competition was relentless. At some point, they would have to face the music. As he sat in his office, reflecting on the decision, Malik felt a sense of clarity. He had always been a fighter, always ready to charge forward no matter the obstacle. But now, he had to be a strategist. He couldn't afford to let impulse guide him. The stakes were too high. And then, just as he was beginning to think they might have a handle on things, the storm hit. Malik's phone buzzed, and he picked it up to see a notification from the news. PulseCell smart home device linked to customer data breach. His heart dropped. This wasn't just a setback, it was a crisis. The headline hit Malik like a punch to the gut. PulseCell smart home device linked to customer data breach. He stared at his phone screen, his mind racing. This wasn't just a setback. It was a catastrophe. The breach had compromised sensitive customer information, including names, addresses, and payment details. The timing couldn't have been worse. PulseCell was already struggling with operational challenges and investor pressure. Now this. Malik felt the blood drain from his face. His pulse quickened. How could this have happened? They had spent so much time and money ensuring the security of their devices. This wasn't supposed to be part of the plan. He immediately dialed Maya. "Maya, what's going on? I just saw the news. Is this true?" Maya's voice on the other end was tense, but calm. "Yes, Malik. It's true. We've confirmed that the data breach was caused by a vulnerability in our cloud system. It seems like hackers were able to gain access to customer data through an unsecured API. We're still trying to get a full picture of the extent, but it's bad. Very bad." Malik closed his eyes, trying to steady his breath. "What are we doing about it?" "We're already in contact with cybersecurity experts to contain the breach," Maya replied. "But the media's already picked up the story. I've been getting calls all morning. We need to control the narrative, Malik, and fast." Malik ran a hand through his hair. This was a nightmare. They had worked so hard to build PulseCell into a brand that consumers trusted. And now, it was all at risk. "Get the team together. I'll be in the boardroom in 10 minutes. We need to figure out a plan." By the time Malik arrived in the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Maya, Reggie, Jamal, and a few of the key team members were already seated, their faces pale and worried. Jamal was fidgeting with his phone, likely monitoring the cybersecurity team's progress, while Reggie was scouring the news for updates. "Malik, we're in deep," Reggie said, looking up from his phone. The media's already running with it. Customers are starting to complain on social media, and some are threatening to file lawsuits. We've got to act now. Malik looked around the room, seeing the same fear reflected in everyone's eyes. This was no longer just a business problem, it was a public relations crisis. PulseCell's future was on the line. We need to make a statement, Malik said, his voice firm despite the anxiety gnawing at him. And we need to be transparent about what happened. The last thing we want is for this to blow up into a bigger scandal. Maya nodded. I agree. But we also need to take immediate action. We're already freezing all customer data processing, and the cybersecurity team is working to patch the vulnerability. We're advising users to change their passwords, but we need to send out an official statement and offer compensation for affected customers. Compensation? Jamal asked, raising an eyebrow. That could cost us a lot of money. Malik looked at Jamal, meeting his eyes. It's not about money right now. It's about trust. We need to make it right, or we'll lose everything. Reggie cleared his throat. I think Malik's right. We can't afford to lose customer trust. If we do, this company might never recover. Malik took a deep breath, his mind racing through all the possible angles of this crisis. They had to move quickly, decisively, and without hesitation. He had to show the world that PulseCell was a company that could weather this storm. We'll send a statement, Malik said. Apologize for the breach, outline what we're doing to fix it, and offer affected customers a free year of our premium service. We'll also offer a full refund to anyone who requests it. Maya nodded, taking notes. I'll get the PR team on it right away. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and media inquiries. The news outlets were relentless, each one pushing for more details, demanding answers. Malik had never felt so exposed. He sat in his office, his phone buzzing non-stop with incoming calls from reporters and investors. He knew the investors were watching closely, waiting for PulseCell to either rise to the occasion or crumble under the weight of the scandal. His stomach churned as he picked up a call from Gregory, the lead investor. Malik, Gregory's voice was sharp, almost accusatory. What the hell is going on? This data breach could destroy us. We need to know what steps you're taking to fix this, and we need a timeline. Yesterday. Malik tried to stay calm. Gregory, we're already on it. We've locked down the vulnerability, and our team is working with cybersecurity experts to ensure it doesn't happen again. We've already issued a public statement and offered compensation to affected customers. I'm doing everything I can to contain this. You better be, Gregory snapped. You've got one shot to fix this, Malik. If you screw this up, it's over. Malik closed his eyes for a brief moment, his pulse hammering in his temples. He couldn't afford to lose everything. He had to turn this crisis around, no matter what. As the day wore on, Malik kept his head down, working alongside the PR team, cybersecurity experts, and the legal department. They crafted the official statement, ensuring it was transparent and sincere. The PR team worked quickly to get the word out on social media, reassuring customers that PulseCell was taking full responsibility for the breach and doing everything possible to prevent future incidents. By late evening, Malik sat in a conference room, his body exhausted but his mind still sharp. The storm wasn't over, but they had taken the first critical step. They had owned the mistake, apologized to their customers, and outlined a clear path forward. As he looked around the room, he saw the team's resolve. They were tired, but they were ready to keep fighting. Malik knew that the real challenge had just begun. The next few weeks would be filled with intense scrutiny and hard decisions. But for the first time in a while, he felt a flicker of hope. He picked up his phone and texted Maya, "Good work today. We'll get through this. We have to." As he set the phone down, he couldn't shake the feeling that this crisis, while devastating, could also be the catalyst for change. If they could survive this, PulseCell would come out stronger, with a renewed sense of purpose, unity, and a commitment to earning back the trust they had lost. The weeks that followed the data breach were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, conference calls, and mounting pressure. Malik had never felt the weight of responsibility so intensely. As PulseCell's CEO, he knew that every decision, every word, every move would be scrutinized. The company's future was on the line. But this wasn't just about business, it was about restoring the trust of every customer who had put faith in PulseCell's technology. Trust was the most fragile currency, and Malik knew they had to win it back, one step at a time. The first priority was transparency. Malik had learned the hard way that trying to hide the truth or sugarcoat a situation only made things worse. So, they continued to keep their customers informed with regular updates on their progress. Maya was in constant communication with the media, offering interviews to major news outlets, while Reggie and Jamal worked tirelessly to fix the technical flaws in the system. There was no time to waste. Every day felt like a race against the clock, but Malik was determined to do everything possible to make things right. Malik, Maya said one morning, sitting across from him in the office, the PR campaign is gaining traction. People are starting to see that we're taking responsibility. But we need to push harder on the community front. We need to show people we care. Malik leaned back in his chair, considering her words. What do you have in mind? Maya smiled faintly. Customer engagement. It's time to show our customers that they're more than just data points to us. We need to give them a chance to be a part of the solution. Let's host a series of online forums, live Q&A sessions, where customers can talk directly to us about their concerns. Transparency in action. Malik felt a spark of hope. He knew that building genuine relationships with customers, rather than just seeing them as numbers, would help repair the damage. Let's do it. Set it up. The first forum was scheduled for the following week. Malik and his team prepared carefully, knowing that it would be their chance to address customers' concerns and, more importantly, show that they were taking the breach seriously. The day of the first live Q&A, Malik sat at his desk, reading through the list of questions that had been submitted in advance. They ranged from angry accusations to genuine concern. Malik knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also understood that this was their chance to turn the narrative around. As the hour approached, he and Maya sat down together in the company's makeshift studio, ready to go live. The tension was palpable. Here we go, Maya said quietly, giving him an encouraging smile. Malik nodded. We're in this together. When the live stream began, Malik's face appeared on screen, a calm and resolute expression on his face. Hello, PulseCell customers. My name is Malik Harper, and I'm the CEO of PulseCell. First and foremost, I want to apologize for the breach that has affected many of you. I understand that you trusted us with your personal data, and I want you to know that we take full responsibility for what happened. We've been working tirelessly to fix the issue, and today, I'm here to answer your questions directly. The first few questions were predictable. One customer asked why PulseCell's security wasn't up to standard. Malik answered honestly, explaining the vulnerability in the system and the steps they had already taken to prevent it from happening again. Another customer asked about compensation. Malik's answer was straightforward. We are offering a full refund to anyone affected by the breach, as well as a free year of our premium service for those impacted. We want to make things right. But then, a question came that caught him off guard. A customer named Emily, her voice shaky with emotion, asked, "How do we know we can trust you again? You failed us once, and I'm scared this could happen again. Why should we give you a second chance?" Malik's heart sank. He had been prepared for criticism, but hearing this level of pain from someone who had trusted them so completely hit harder than he had anticipated. He took a deep breath before answering. I completely understand your fear, Emily. And honestly, I don't expect you to trust us right away. We've broken that trust, and I know that's not something that can be fixed overnight. But what I can promise you is that we are doing everything we can to ensure this doesn't happen again. We're investing in stronger security measures, working with top-tier cybersecurity experts, and most importantly, we're listening to you. Your feedback matters. And while trust is something we've lost, it's something we're committed to earning back, one step at a time. Emily's face softened, and she nodded. I appreciate your honesty. I hope you can prove that. Malik nodded back, his own heart heavy but resolute. We will. Thank you for giving us the chance. The Q&A session lasted for over an hour, and although the questions kept coming, Malik felt a sense of relief as the session ended. The feedback had been overwhelmingly positive, and the level of engagement was encouraging. Customers didn't just want answers, they wanted to feel heard, and Malik had provided that. Later that day, the social media posts flooded in. Many customers expressed their gratitude for the open conversation, and a few even wrote messages of support, saying that they would give PulseCell another chance. The storm wasn't over, but Malik felt like they were finally on the path to redemption. He called Maya after the session. How did we do? It was a huge success, Maya replied. The numbers on the live stream were off the charts, and people are starting to share their stories on social media. There's still a long road ahead, but this was a big step. Malik leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a small sigh of relief. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're heading in the right direction. Despite the progress they'd made, Malik knew there was more to be done. Rebuilding trust was a marathon, not a sprint. They needed to keep their promises and continue engaging with their customers. He called an emergency meeting with the leadership team to discuss the next steps. We've made a solid start, Malik said, looking around the room. But we can't stop here. We need to ramp up our community engagement. Let's do more of these forums, keep the communication lines open, and start building partnerships with organizations that focus on data privacy and security. Maya raised her hand. What if we did something proactive, like a charity campaign? Maybe a partnership with an organization that helps victims of cybercrimes? It could show that we're committed to making a positive difference. Malik smiled, impressed by her suggestion. That's a great idea. Let's do it. We'll build something meaningful, and show our customers that we are committed to making amends. In the weeks that followed, PulseCell launched a series of initiatives to regain their customers' trust. They continued their transparency campaign, hosted more Q&A sessions, and partnered with a nonprofit focused on cybersecurity education. Malik and his team worked tirelessly, knowing that rebuilding what had been broken would take time, but they were willing to do whatever it took. As for Malik, he knew that this crisis had forever changed him. It had tested his resolve and forced him to confront uncomfortable truths. But it also showed him the power of honesty, humility, and community. If they could survive this, PulseCell would come out stronger. And as the days passed, he began to believe that they just might. It had been months since the data breach, and Malik was exhausted. Every day had been a battle to regain the trust of their customers, fix the internal systems, and reassure investors. Despite all the progress they had made, the road ahead was still fraught with uncertainty. A lot of people still doubted whether PulseCell could ever fully recover, but Malik had come to terms with that. He had learned that rebuilding trust was a slow, painful process. And sometimes, success was measured by the small victories. Today, however, would be the final test. Malik stood at the head of a conference table, facing a room full of investors. His stomach twisted with anxiety. This was the moment he had been working toward, the moment that could make or break everything PulseCell had fought for. After months of dealing with the fallout from the breach, the company's future now rested on the strength of this presentation. He glanced around the room. Gregory, the lead investor, sat with his arms crossed, a skeptical look on his face. There were a few new faces in the room, some potential investors who were still on the fence. Malik knew they were watching closely, waiting to see if PulseCell was truly back on track or if it was all smoke and mirrors. We've come a long way, Malik began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. When we faced the data breach, we didn't just fix the technical issues, we rebuilt the foundation of this company. We've invested in stronger security measures, revamped our customer service operations, and launched initiatives to re-engage our community. And now, we're ready for the future. He paused, watching the room closely, giving everyone a moment to absorb his words. But the true test of our recovery isn't just in what we've done, it's in how we've transformed. We've learned from our mistakes, and we've emerged more committed than ever to our mission, to create technology that's both innovative and responsible. Gregory leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. Malik, you've made a lot of promises. But can you really guarantee that this company is back on track? What's to stop something like the breach from happening again? Malik met his gaze directly, refusing to back down. I can't guarantee that nothing will ever go wrong again. That would be unrealistic. But what I can promise you is this: we've made significant changes to our infrastructure and our approach to security. We've learned from the past, and we've built a stronger, more resilient company. Pulsell is not just surviving, it's evolving. The room was quiet for a moment, and then one of the new investors, a woman named Claire, spoke up. What are your plans for growth moving forward? How do you intend to scale and stay competitive in such a fast-moving market? Malik smiled, relieved by the question. He had prepared for this. We have a two-pronged strategy. First, we're focusing on deepening our relationships with existing customers by providing them with even more value. We've already launched a new set of features that expand our smart home ecosystem, and we're planning to roll out a subscription-based service that will provide our customers with additional benefits. Second, we're looking to expand internationally. The demand for smart home technology is growing globally, and Pulsell is in a prime position to capitalize on that. He could feel the room's energy shift. Investors who had been skeptical just moments ago now seemed more engaged. The message was clear: Pulsell wasn't just trying to survive, it was positioning itself for long-term growth. Just as Malik began to feel a glimmer of hope, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it briefly. It was a message from Maya. His heart skipped a beat. Malik, we have a problem. The media just caught wind of a new report about another security vulnerability in our system. It's small, but it's enough to raise questions. Malik's mind went into overdrive. A new vulnerability? After everything they had been through, this was the last thing they needed. He quickly excused himself from the meeting, stepping into a private room to call Maya. What's going on? How bad is it? It's not catastrophic, Maya said, her voice tight. But it's enough to draw attention. We've already patched it, but the timing couldn't be worse. We need to act fast. Malik ran a hand through his hair, thinking. We'll address it head-on. Let's get the PR team on a statement and release it as soon as possible. We can't afford to let this spiral out of control. He took a deep breath, refocusing. This was the ultimate test, not just for Pulsell, but for his leadership. It was one thing to overcome a crisis, it was another to do it in real time, with the world watching. They had come so far, but now they had to prove they could handle the pressure. Back in the conference room, Malik stood before the investors, trying to keep his composure. The investors were clearly curious about what had happened. They could sense the tension in the air. I need to be upfront with all of you, Malik began, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. While we've worked hard to address every vulnerability in our system, I've just been informed of a new issue that has been flagged by our security team. We've already taken immediate action to fix it, and we'll be releasing a statement within the hour to explain what happened and how we've resolved it. There was a murmur in the room. Malik could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but he refused to back down. This isn't a setback. It's a challenge, yes, but it's also an opportunity for us to demonstrate that we've learned from the past and that we can handle anything that comes our way. We've got the right team in place, and we've built a system that can adapt and evolve with the times. Gregory, always the skeptic, looked at Malik carefully. And what happens if this issue escalates? What's the plan if the media runs with it again? Malik smiled slightly, his confidence returning. "We'll face it head-on, just like we've done before. We're prepared. We're stronger than we were 6 months ago, and we're ready to prove it." It was a long day, filled with tense phone calls, meetings, and media inquiries. But as evening fell, Malik received the first sign that things were turning in their favor. The statement addressing the new vulnerability had gone live, and the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Customers appreciated the transparency, and the media was more measured than before. The investors were impressed by how quickly PulseCell had responded, and many of them expressed their continued support. By the time Malik returned to his office, he felt a deep sense of relief. The crisis had passed, for now. The company was not out of the woods yet, but they had proven that they could handle adversity, and that made all the difference. He sat down at his desk, his mind replaying the events of the day. The feeling of having passed the final test was bittersweet. The road to recovery had been long and difficult, but Malik knew that PulseCell was stronger than ever. And more than anything, he knew that this was just the beginning. The sun was setting over the city as Malik stood on the rooftop of PulseCell's headquarters, looking out over the skyline. It had been a long, grueling journey, and the weight of everything they had been through still lingered in his bones. But today, for the first time in months, Malik felt a sense of peace. The tension had eased. PulseCell had survived the storm, and not only had they survived, but they had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever. Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a message from Reggie. "Malik, we did it. Investors are on board. The company's back on track." He smiled as he read the message, his heart swelling with pride. Reggie's words weren't just about securing funding, they were about the recognition of all the hard work, the sleepless nights, and the sacrifices that had been made to get to this point. The final test with the investors had been a defining moment, but it wasn't just Malik who had fought to rebuild PulseCell. It was Maya, Reggie, Jamal, and everyone who had worked tirelessly to restore the company's reputation. They had faced unimaginable pressure, but through it all, they had remained united. Maya had been instrumental in managing public relations, ensuring that PulseCell maintained a steady stream of communication with customers and the media. Her ability to stay calm under fire had been invaluable. Jamal, with his technical expertise, had ensured that every vulnerability in the system was addressed. His team had worked round the clock to implement new security protocols, earning back the trust of their users. Reggie, always the strategist, had worked on the business side, securing new partnerships and finding innovative ways to push PulseCell into new markets. His vision had helped the company pivot from a simple tech provider to an industry leader with a clear, forward-thinking strategy. Together, they had weathered the storm. And now, it was time for PulseCell to soar. As the months passed, PulseCell's momentum continued to build. The company's security infrastructure was stronger than ever, and customer trust had been fully restored. More than that, PulseCell had become a model for how to handle a crisis, how to turn a near-catastrophic event into an opportunity for growth and transformation. Malik had learned invaluable lessons over the past year. He had learned that leadership was not just about making decisions in times of calm, but about making the tough calls when everything seemed to be falling apart. He had learned that humility was key, and that admitting mistakes was not a sign of weakness, but of strength. And perhaps most importantly, Malik had learned that true success wasn't just about building a company, it was about building a community. PulseCell had made a commitment to its customers that went beyond profit. They had shown that they cared, that they were willing to do whatever it took to make things right. And that was something no one could take away. Sitting at his desk in the now bustling headquarters, Malik felt a sense of excitement for the future. The company had plans to expand globally, launching new products, and forging partnerships with major players in the tech and cybersecurity industries. The future was full of potential, and PulseCell was ready to seize it. But Malik knew that even with everything they had achieved, they could never become complacent. The world of technology was ever evolving, and PulseCell needed to remain agile and innovative to stay ahead of the curve. They couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. The lessons they had learned during the crisis would guide them as they moved forward, ensuring they never lost sight of what was truly important, their customers and their commitment to making the world a safer, more connected place. Malik's thoughts were interrupted when Maya walked into his office, a smile on her face. "How's the view?" she asked, looking out the window with him. Malik smiled, turning to her. "It's perfect. The city's never looked so beautiful." "Speaking of beauty," Maya said, holding up a folder, "we've got some exciting news. Pulsel has been nominated for a major tech award. Our security overhaul and our community engagement efforts are being recognized industry-wide." Malik's eyes widened. "That's incredible. After everything we've been through, this is the kind of recognition we need." Maya chuckled. "It's just the beginning. You've built something special, Malik. And we're just getting started." It had been a long road, but now, standing on the edge of a new horizon, Malik could see the fruits of all their labor. He thought back to the early days, when Pulsel was just an idea, a vision he had believed in with all his heart. He thought about the people who had doubted him, the ones who had said he couldn't do it, couldn't make it. But here they were. Pulsel was not just surviving, it was thriving. He thought about his family, the people who had supported him through the hardest times. His mother's words echoed in his mind, "You've always had something special, Malik. Just keep going." It had been that belief, that drive, that had kept him moving forward, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Pulsel continued to grow. They launched new products, expanded into new markets, and solidified their place as one of the leading tech companies in the world. But more than that, Pulsel became a symbol of resilience, of overcoming adversity, and of the power of second chances. Malik had proven everyone wrong. He had turned the impossible into reality. As he stood on the rooftop, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Malik felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They had faced the darkest of times, but they had come through it, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The future was bright. And this was just the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?